Back when I was in college in Texas, my roommates and I decided to drive to Boulder, Colorado for spring break. To maximize our time in Boulder, we decided to take shifts and drive all the way through rather than stopping for overnight stays. It was roughly an 18-hour trip, so I'm driving on my shift when we reached the Texas Panhandle in the early morning hours. We were out in the middle of nowhere and have not seen a single car in either direction for ages when we noticed headlights behind us. The car came up on us quickly, then followed behind for some time. Oddly, it would get real close to us, then back off real far, then get close again. This pattern continued for several miles. We are in the car nervously joking about it being a potential deliverance situation, set in Texas flatland. Suddenly, the headlights were joined by red and blue police lights. It was so dark out there that we had not seen the light bar on the hood and had not realized we were being followed by a cop. I checked my speedometer and I'm not speeding, so we're all wondering why we're getting pulled over. But I go ahead and pull to the shoulder. Up comes a cop wearing a cowboy hat to my window. He shines his light in the car and looks us over, then asks me to get out of the car. I hesitate at first, but there are 3 other people in the car, so I'm not feeling particularly unsafe at this point. I grab my wallet, get out, and stand against the driver door. The cop looks at my license and insurance, then tells me he's going to do a sobriety test. I'm thinking, what the heck? But I know I've had nothing to drink, so I say okay. The way the cop directed me for the walking in a straight line test had me ending my walk right by his car. When I finished, he reached over to open his back passenger's door and then told me to get in. What? Why? I said. Sit in the car while I look up your license. Now, I had heard how doors on the back of a cop car only open from the outside, so I know if I get in his car and he closes it, I won't be able to get out. It's like 3 a.m. in the morning, pitch black darkness, on a road dozens of miles from any civilization. I am not getting in that car. I'm sorry, sir. With all respect and for my own safety, I do not want to get in the back of your car. What did you say to me? He asked. Me repeating. For my own safety and with all respect, I am not sitting in the back of your car. You can call for another officer to come out here, but I do not feel safe getting in there. Do you realize I could arrest you right now for not obeying an order from a police officer? Me repeating again. Sir, not meaning to be disrespectful, but I'm not getting in the car. We go back and forth like this for several minutes, him threatening to arrest me. My friends, hold us overnight, and all of that, and me refusing to get in the car still. The cop then leers at me and asks, what are you afraid of, being kidnapped? What the heck? How messed up to even ask that. I glance towards my car and see my friends piled up at the back window, watching the 2 guys looking ready to jump out. The cop turns to look at them too. I don't know what went through his mind, but after being completely aggressive with me for what seemed like forever, he finally gave me a creepy smile, handed back my license and insurance, tipped his hat, then got in the car and drove off. At this point, I was shaking so badly that my friends had to help me get back in the car. I don't even remember if he gave me a ticket. I was so glad that I had not cried in front of this jerk, but I totally broke down once in the back seat. To this day, I think about this dickhead deciding to terrorize a young college female at 3 a.m. in the middle of rural Texas, and often wondered what would have happened if I had not stood my ground and instead gotten in that damn cop car. To give a little context, I used to work at an apartment complex. As a result, I've had my fair share of creepy encounters. Most residents keep to themselves and don't cause issues. Probably about 95%, but the other 5% took up almost all of my time. Isaac was one of the 5%. When he first rented his apartment, he definitely had stoner vibes, but he was nice enough and passed his background check. Almost immediately, however, he started causing issues. The lady next door complained that she could smell his smoke constantly. The guy downstairs complained he could hear his stereo all hours of the day and night. Another resident also accused him of following him home one night. The police were regularly there breaking up fights between him and his girlfriends. He caught him hiding 2 large dogs in his apartment, and he regularly let them run loose, which ultimately resulted in another dog and 2 people getting attacked. He accidentally discharged a gun in his apartment once even. Needless to say, he caused a lot of problems. At first he was very apologetic and said he would make an effort to remedy the problems, but things kept getting worse. And after a year of weekly calls or notices from the office, he eventually became standoffish. One morning, I received a call from Isaac letting me know he'd broken up with one of his girls and she wouldn't leave the apartment. He asked me to personally come up and remove her. I'm a small woman, so even if I wanted to take the risk, I physically wouldn't be capable of wrestling an angry woman out of his apartment. I suggested that he call the police. He then asked if I could make a maintenance man come up to remove her. I offered to call the police on his behalf, but Isaac said he didn't want to involve them and hung up. A few hours later, Isaac came down to the office with a jump drive and said he needed to print out a 50-plus page document. Residents weren't technically allowed to use our office printer, but on the rare occasion someone asked to, I usually didn't say no. It was an easy way to build good rapport. But between Isaac becoming such a problem tenant and how large his document was, I told him I couldn't print it for him. I gave the excuse that our paper and toner and print history was monitored and we would get in trouble for printing such a large document out for him. Not liking my answer, of course, he started screaming about how that was BS, accused me of being useless and bringing up my refusal to fight his ex, and power tripping. He called me a bitch multiple times and said somebody needed to bring me down. I was pretty over him at this point and told him that if he was going to behave like a child, then he needed to leave. He told me I couldn't make him. Bluntly, I told him he would leave or I would call the police and have him removed. I also told him I would ban him from the office going forward. Normally, I try to kill the residents with kindness, but his lease was ending in a week and I didn't care anymore if he hated me. My threat seemed to work. He angrily knocked my pen holder over, then slammed both doors hard as he left. The following morning, a cop was waiting for me when I got to work. He asked if Isaac was a resident and I confirmed he was. The officer explained that the body of a teen had been discovered the day before and Isaac was their prime suspect. He was the last person to text the kid, asking him to meet where his body was found shortly after the message. The police believed Isaac had been paid to kill him. Based on the timing of the text and when the boy was discovered, Isaac would have been left to my office and gone directly there. Ultimately, the police wanted to use Isaac's move-out day as an opportunity to try and catch him. To nobody's surprise, he didn't show up. When I walked to his apartment to inspect for damage, there was a lot, mind you, I found a bank receipt from the day of the murder. Somebody had wired him $17,000. I thankfully never saw Isaac again. He was caught in another country a few months later and is now in prison. This isn't so much one encounter, but it was a terrifying experience. I've never told this story to anyone beside the police, but I've been thinking a lot about it lately and only recently realized how much the whole thing has really messed me up. So here goes. I met this guy at a bar one night. We had a great time, partied all night, and eventually ended up back at my apartment. After that, he basically lived with me instead of the hostel he was staying at. We clicked right away, and I enjoyed having him there. We dated for about 3 months before the first night he attacked me. It was the night of my 30th birthday. We celebrated, had a blast, and passed out at about 3 a.m. He told me he had suffered from PTSD and night terrors. He had woken up many nights freaking out. I was deeply passed out when I awoke to 5 quick blows to my head and face. I tried to cover myself, not knowing at all what the heck was happening, when I realized my arms were pinned at my sides. He was sitting on my chest with his legs on my arms and strangling me before I had any idea where I even was. I only remember the light fading and going black as he squeezed harder on my neck. When he let go, the blood eventually rushed back to my brain, and I remember seeing him walk to the bathroom. At that point, I grabbed the dogs and ran to my car and took off. He must have passed back out. He called me hours later, completely confused as to where I went. I told him everything he had done, and he promised he didn't mean to do any of that, and he would never do it on purpose, and he promised to seek help. I agreed to come back on the terms that if he ever scared me again, he'd be gone. Exactly 1 week later, again in my sleep, I woke up to him on top of me, but not doing anything. I slowly pushed him off and pretended to be getting ready for work. Out of nowhere, he jumped up and sucker punched me in the mouth. I fell onto the bed and he again tried to strangle me. This time I didn't fight and pretended to pass out. He let me go once he thought I was passed out and went to the kitchen. As soon as he left, I grabbed my dogs again and booked it to the car. I jumped in the car and locked it. This time he chased me. That was when I realized this wasn't some PTSD nightmare sleepwalking freakout. He was a psychopath. He was awake and very coherent. He was screaming that he'd burn my house down if I didn't come out, trying to break the windows to get in my car. As soon as I got the doors locked, I called the cops. He went back inside. When the cops arrived, I told them he's crazy and might try to attack them. When they went in, he was quietly waiting for them and went with them without any resistance. He knew what he did. It wasn't until during the trial I found out that there was a knife in my bed. When he let go of me and went to the kitchen, thinking I was passed out, he went to get a butcher's knife and left it on the bed when he chased me out. No one can prove what he was planning, but I am convinced he was going to stab me to death. He wasn't charged with anything in the end because the DA pulled some fancy luring maneuvers and tricked him into walking right into the arms of ICE as soon as he left the courthouse. I have to say that was satisfying to watch. He was deported and banned from the country. He still tries to contact me on social media by making new accounts to try to get me to help with his appeal to be allowed back. Nope, he still claims he wasn't awake for any of this. I don't know what I believe, but I know I feel a lot safer with him on the other side of the globe. I've been having a hard time sleeping since then. I kind of brushed everything off and carried on with my life, as if none of them ever happened. Thinking about it recently, I realized being attacked in your sleep, and coming that close to possibly being a murder victim, might cause some lasting psychological damage. I am considering seeking help. I think maybe sharing the story for once might be a very first healthy step. Just for a bit of background, I, male 17, was with my girlfriend, female 18, in England on a little getaway with my parents. Also to point out, even though I'm 17, I definitely look younger. I'm 5'4", roughly, and due to that, I occasionally get misaged by different people. I think this should be known for later on in this story. Also, I wear a swimming top when I go in any swimming pool because I get anxious. My girlfriend and I decided it would be cool for us to go for a swim in the pool within the hotel. It was nothing super big or super small, and luckily there was only one other guy doing laps in the pool. Nothing was remotely strange in the slightest. This is an inside pool for the record. I put down our towels and the key to our locker on a chain and got in. Around 5 minutes later, an older man, probably 40 to 50, entered the room in a small pink bikini. Obviously, it's a bit odd to see and very uncommon, however, I don't actually have a real issue with it. Each to their own, I guess. What was weird is when he entered, I and my girlfriend kept very much to ourselves, with minimal eye contact with anyone else in the pool, and we didn't speak. However, this guy came over to us almost immediately and said, "Hey." Out of kindness, we both said hi back and smiled. Normal stuff, I guess. He would swim around the area of us and make eye contact specifically with me repeatedly. I felt beyond weird as I wanted to relaxing swim with my girlfriend. He continuously swam in our area until he made the comment about how he hopes I don't mind that he wears lady clothes, as he is gay. Yes, he looked me in the eyes as he said that. I felt slightly awkward because he was in a bikini. Not that anything is wrong with that, however, I just couldn't help but notice he was looking at me often. I was growing more and more uncomfortable. However, I didn't want to be a nuisance and make my girlfriend get out of the pool because of it. Nothing much really happened while in the pool itself from that point onwards, as we didn't move much around. Pretty much hovering in one spot, talking with me slightly nervously. He went and spoke to the other guy swimming for a while, but kept peeking at me while doing so. To be honest, I think the other guy just wanted to swim and didn't care what he was talking about. However, after that chat, he then got out. As the guy got out of the pool, he went and laid down on the chair next to the one we had with our towels on. I don't know if he specifically chose that one on purpose, as he could clearly see it was ours, as 2 towels were there. It could be excused as a coincidence, I guess. However, once my girlfriend walked away and I was grabbing my towel, he decided to ask in a specific tone about why I was wearing my swimming top. This gave me incredible vibes of him flirting in a way, asking me why I wouldn't take my shirt off when I swim. I was stumped and answered with, because sunburn. Keep in mind we are in an inside pool. I also just said it felt comfortable because I realized we are inside and I probably looked beyond stupid. He smiled at me and said, "Oh, okay," or something along those lines. He then said, "I think you look better without it on." This made my heart race and I was ready to go. I was shocked he even had the guts to say that to me, so I just laughed it off and said bye. I feel like it was incredibly inappropriate to even ask a child why he wears swimming tops, let alone already have made it known that you are gay and you like wearing lady clothes, and then state I would look better topless. Sir, I have been mistaken as a 12-year-old in the last year. I have a deeper voice, and if you knew my age, I'm sure you could realize that I'm truly 17, but initially a lot of people think I'm younger than that. I managed to escape and get dry and changed in the changing rooms without him coming in at all. If he did, I would have known it's on site, but yeah, that's my weird little story. I'm really interested in hearing some opinions about how you feel about this situation. If you think it was completely normal or if it seemed like there was weird intent. Although, understand it's different when you are in this situation and you can properly understand emotion and intent with someone rather than being told it. I always sleep with one eye open, but I haven't used a sleeping aid to this day because of what happened that night. For some context, I used to live alone with my mom when I was a teenager, and she was on some pretty powerful sleeping meds at the time. I guess it runs in the family because I was also a deep insomniac, sometimes missing sleep for days at a time. So I turned towards a slightly more natural option than my mom, a blend of supplements including Valerian, along with some other stuff that seemed to help. By bedtime, I went back to my room. I had divided the room in a way that I had to go around a shelving unit to get to my bed. I left the layout of my room looking like a U shape, where one end of the U was the door and the other was my bed. I took my supplements, and as they kicked in, I slowly faded to sleep. I don't exactly know how much time passed, but I woke up in a daze, still well sedated. I was nudged from my slumber because I heard a muffled voice in my room, but I was still half awake and I couldn't process the words being said. I managed to open my eyes, and my vision was still blurry. I could see that there was a man facing me, very tall, standing on the other side of the shelving unit where the door was. A tall man, I thought to myself, still in a daze. Then my brain kicked into overdrive. I lived alone with my mom, and the only other man here was me. Adrenaline finally rushed through me, waking me up for good, and I sprang up. I feel I must preface what happens next with the fact that I was a bit of a wild kid at the time and was really into weapons and knives. And next to my bed was my trusty machete. For people in the US, guns are kind of hard to come by in Canada unless you're a hunter/security with the proper license. But people here feel generally safe enough to omit having any kinds of weapon in their house at all. So let's just say that being a bit of a maniac for French Canadian standards, I guess, paid off that day. I jumped off the bed and grabbed my machete, and as soon as he saw me reach for it, he did a quick 180 and bolted towards the exit. I ran around the shelving unit looking like a half-naked Jason Voorhees. By the time I had reached the outside of my bedroom, he had already run out of the apartment. The first thing I noticed was that he had kicked the front door completely off its hinges to get in. I didn't hear anything like that, so I guess the meds were working. I was about to pursue him, but my mom finally entered my mind. Her room was right next to the entrance. Her door was closed, so I ran into her room only to find her fast asleep. Relief washed over me, and I woke her up as I dialed the police. The police came and were as useful as you'd imagine. If they don't catch you mid-murder, or at the very least with the intruder in the house, there isn't much they could do. I asked them what I'm supposed to do for the rest of the night without a front door in the middle of the city, and they assured me I probably scared the guy enough for him to not come back. After they left, I told my mom to go back to sleep and I would stand guard for the rest of the night. I sat up on the couch with the machete next to me and stayed awake until the sun came up. But as I sat there at night and thought about the whole ordeal, some creepy details stood out to me. The intruder had left every door in the house closed except for the one to my bedroom. He essentially kicked the front door in and went straight to my room. I also wondered, what was he saying to me before I finally got my senses back? Was this just someone drugged out of their mind, or maybe someone who used to live here looking for someone else only to find me? Or was this all meant for me? Worst yet, if that were the case, what would have happened if I weren't armed at that moment? So let's just say that putting a weapon next to my bed has become a new tradition whenever I move somewhere new. And though my sleep has gotten much better, it's not very hard to wake me up. I also have a lot of crazy stories from my travels, including making friends with a cannibal in India, fighting off a pack of wolves in a screaming match, almost getting murdered by angry monkeys and apes on 3 different occasions, and close encounters with a horde of hand-sized spiders coming face to face with a wasp nest 3 times my size. But I have to say, man is still the scariest of all creatures. Before I begin, this guy has been fired and this whole story took place months and months ago. Alright, so I was hired to work at this auto shop at the front desk receptionist. My guy friend had worked there and had gotten me the job. I checked customers in, checked them out, answered phones, entered invoices. Blah blah blah, boring stuff. Now at this time I got hired, I was freshly 15. I do in fact act mature for my age, and all of the horse shit, I was still technically a child, and I was also the only girl working here. Now, my 2 managers, let's call them Peter and Elvin. Peter was my main boss, and he had a dry sense of humor, but he was cool to be around. Elvin was more openly humorous, and he was just very pleasant in general. And then there was this third guy. I'll call him Chester because I hate that name. He was 40 with a girlfriend, as well as a 13-year-old daughter. He was very exuberant, very loud, quite funny, and also a dumbass too. But this isn't the right sub. It started off decent, and he would tease me like a boy on the playground. Like pull my hair, poke me, etc. Now, I laid my rules down when I first worked there. I hated being touched. That's that. Now Chester would get as close to me as humanly possible and say, "I'm not touching you. Haha." It was annoying, and I just laughed it off, although I felt very uncomfortable. Then he started with the sexual jokes. When we were alone up front, he would go into talking about his sex life and pop a bunch of jokes. My brain was automatically like, this isn't right, and I just kind of put on my customer service voice whenever I was around him. Then one day I baked a whole batch of garage cookies. When I dropped them off, he came really close to me and sniffed me. "You smell good and your hair looks nice this way." WTF. Nah, nope. Did not like that one bit. When I went back to work, he was going on and on about the cookies I made. He said, "I know, cookie is another term for something inappropriate, but I really like your cookies. Why even add that?" And now at my breaking point. He had started brushing his fingers against my leg when I was sitting down, or just trying to flirt with me in general. But when I came into work one day, he grabbed me into a hug and my mind blinked. He grabbed me. Full on grabbed me into a hug so I couldn't escape. I pushed him back away from me. Alvin had rounded the corner and I'd seen that happen, and he looked a little uneasy. I went around the other side of the counter, away from Chester, and I said, "I don't like to be touched, dude. Don't hug me." And he said, "Well, touch is how I show my affection." So not only did he ignore my attempt to tell him to stop, he also admitted to literally giving affection to a 15-year-old. I later heard from my friend that works in the garage that Chester talked about the way I look a lot, and how I look older than I am, but that he doesn't want to start anything because his daughter was 2 years younger. Start what, bitch? Is what I'm thinking. Chester was ugly as heck, by the way. So Alvin had seen him grab me. The dudes in the garage heard him talk about me, and I knew this dude was creepy as heck. A guy in the garage, let's call him Steve, pulled Alvin aside and told him that he was worried for me. He told him what Chester has been saying and how he looks to be flirting with me. Before this point, Alvin had thought that he had been too overprotective because he had daughters himself, and maybe he was just having his father instinct kicked in. When Steve told him that, it basically confirmed his suspicions. Chester was gross. I ended up speaking up to Alvin near the end of the day, asking to stay after to talk to him about something. We stayed after, and I opened up to him about everything Chester had been doing. Alvin said that what I do is more important than the work that he does. After that, I went home and felt nice that my bosses cared for me like a human and not just an employee. Peter, my boss, texted me to tell me that everything's going to be okay and that he will be handled. I ended up meeting with Peter's dad, who is the big boss, to tell him everything. It was very much, we've known Chester for a long time, yada yada, but Big Boss is a good man and he trusted my word more. I told him everything. He has a camera recording of Chester grabbing me even. Chester was finally fired. The most traumatic thing to me was how he talked about me in the garage, like some kind of object. It was weird. Going back to the fact that he is 40 and I'm just 2 years older than his daughter. Shit's insane. I'm sure that if I weren't such a confident person, he would have taken advantage of me. He was very much acting like a predator, and I'm very glad he is no longer part of the establishment. So guys, teach your daughters to speak the heck up when people make them uncomfortable. Even the little things like weird jokes turn into something bigger. That's how it is for young women nowadays. Always enforce your boundaries and never ever let a guy get away with being a creep. Edit. As another thing I'm adding here is that he was very friendly. He's the type of guy that made customers blush and would make your parents feel comfortable with the smooth talk. Grooming isn't always straight up sexual advances right away. They try to get you to trust them first, be their friend, and then force you into things. So be careful, ladies and men, and all in between. This took place a couple of years ago. I was 16 or so. I'm 22 female now. I used to work at a well-known fast food restaurant. I typically had to work the closing shift since I had school earlier in the day, so by the time I got home, it was around 11:30 p.m. I had my own car at this time, and when I got off of work, I used to like to sit in my car, recline the driver's seat back, listen to music, and just chill out. I used to do this because I have helicopter parents, so this was the only real alone time that I got without being hovered around. Well, one particular night I was exhausted. I got stuck with the slow closers, so I got home a little bit later than normal. I started up my normal routine of sitting in my car, but instead of listening to music and scrolling through my phone, I leaned back and closed my eyes. I didn't fall asleep or anything. I was just listening to myself breathe while taking in the silence of my own company. I don't remember how long I was lying back with my eyes closed, but suddenly I bolted up and saw my mom with an angry face waving frantically at me. She was gesturing at me to come to her immediately. I sighed and hurried out of the car towards her. I would like to add my parents liked to drink, so she was pretty inebriated when I approached them. She grabbed me by my shoulders and hissed, "Who was out there with you?" Confused, I shook her off. "Nobody, Mom. I was just sitting in my car by myself before I came in." I remember feeling a little bit annoyed because I thought I was going to get in trouble, but her face soon turned from angry to concern. "What?" "Somebody was out there. They were looking in at you through your window. Came out here because I had a funny feeling, and when they saw me, they took off in the neighbor's yard." She was slurring her words together terribly and was visibly shaking. Being the teenager that I was, I just rolled my eyes and took her inside. I just thought she was drunk, overprotective parent who got worried that I wasn't inside the house at the normal time. The next morning rolls around and I do my normal stuff for my school routine. Kiss my parents goodbye, and as I'm unlocking my car door, I noticed something that stops me dead in my tracks. I felt the cold sweat creep up on me with a chill sliding down my spine. My forehead and 2 forearm prints were on my driver's side window. Never sat in my car after work again after that. I think about it from time to time, about what would have happened had my mother not come outside to check where I was. Were they looking into my car to break into it? Did they notice me completely defenseless and try to scare me? I have no idea, but I'm glad I never found out. This happened about 6 months ago. I, 19 female, was about halfway through my hours in cosmetology school and was taking clients. It was a regular Friday afternoon, and I was getting ready for my last client that I had scheduled. The book said his name was Tim, and he was a new guest that had never been to the school before. I went to go get Tim when he checked in, and the first thing he said to me was, "I ran all the way here for you. I ran all the way here for you on Wednesday too, but they said you were busy." I was like, what the heck? So I just laughed and thought maybe he was crazy or something. But things got really weird. Tim had these piercing blue eyes, and the only way I can describe him is that he looked like some kind of alien whose skin was too tight over his face. His appearance alone freaked me out. Then he started talking. He said, and I quote, "I have a twin brother that lives in Georgia. I went to go live with him for a while, but I had to run away because all the cops kept accusing me of breaking into homes and raping a bunch of women. So I ran all the way to Daytona Beach, Florida, but couldn't stay there long either because all the police were trying to shoot me. So I ended up running all the way back here to town. Needless to say, I cut his hair pretty fast just to get him out of there." I was beyond freaked out at this point, and when he was checking out, he said, "I'll be back again for you, Savannah." At that point, I told all the staff that if the man ever comes back, I'll refuse to do service on him. Come to find out later, a local news station released a story about a man that got out of the penitentiary after 23 years for the assault and murder of a 15-year-old girl while he was 15. It was a cold case for 16 years until they reopened the case and arrested this man. And then I saw his mugshot, and it was definitely Tim, a fake name at this point, and I started crying. To this day, I still look over my shoulder and have nightmares about him. He literally shook me to my core. My mom and her friends spent the day at the beach in Florida. The friend that drove had to go to work, but they stayed and said they would walk home. They were walking back and it was burning hot in the high 90s. A white pickup truck drove past them, then slowed down and made a U-turn. He stopped to talk to them. I should preface this with the fact that my mom and her friend were both drop dead gorgeous and wearing bikinis and shorts. They said the truck that stopped was driven by a young man that was very handsome and probably in his late 20s. He offered them a ride. My mom, who was always wary of strange men back then, said no, but her friend started to whine and said, "Come on, it's hot and we have another mile to go. It will just take a few minutes." My mom still didn't want to, but her friend climbed in the truck and my mom didn't want to leave her alone. So she reluctantly climbed in the front seat with her friend in between her and the man. Her friend was a chatty Kathy, and she talked away to this guy without paying attention to anything around her. My mom had a bad feeling and noticed the man still hadn't turned his truck around and was heading out to the dunes, where there was basically nothing but deserted beaches for miles. She looked over and realized he had pulled all of his junk out of his pants and was masturbating. My mom instantly became angry and she grabbed the door handle and opened it. She said, "You need to stop this truck right now and let us out, you sick weirdo." At the same time, her friend snapped out of it and saw what was going on. She flipped shit and, according to my mom, dived straight over her and out of the moving truck. As she jumped out, the man tried to grab her and only got a hold of her bikini top so it came off. She said she watched as her friend hit the ground and it was like slow motion. The man then began to speed up. My mom was looking at how fast the ground was moving and he says, "You can stay in here with me or you can jump out. You're gonna die either way." That was enough for my mom, so she jumped out and skated across the road. Her entire left side was road rash from head to toe. She lay on the ground dazed and wondering if she was going to die. Her now topless friend ran over to her screaming, "Get up, he's coming. He's coming back." My mom rolled over and looked in time to see him doing an upturn and speeding back to finish what he started. Her friend helped her back up and they ran towards the beach. They just happened to jump out right where the lifeguard station was. They were greeted by lifeguards, many of them their friends who administered first aid. My mom went through enough months of healing and had a sprained ankle. Her friend was unharmed, and the man was never caught. This happened to one of my best friends and me a few months ago. Usually after work, she gets to the train station and drives home. But since I've told her about this subreddit, she calls me as soon as she gets off the train, and we don't hang up till she's safely in her car. She kind of leaves her phone in her pocket or hand and doesn't talk, but it's reassuring for her to have me there with her. My friend calls earlier than usual, and I greet her happily as I'm clicking away, murdering the Thalmor. And then she suddenly says, "Mom, we need to buy some milk. I need it for the birthday cake." Yeah, we need to get it from the one near the city. It's his favorite. The problem with this sentence is, 1, my friend couldn't bake for crap, and 2, she's lactose intolerant. Anyway, I realized something was obviously wrong, and I asked our floor mates to come to the situation with me and told them that we need to go pick her friend up. When we arrive, I ring her up again, and she says, "Yeah, Mom, I know. You might have to get the guys to set it up on the platform. I went to their office this morning. Yeah, it'll be safe for the kids to play on." So my friend and I make our way to the main office, and our friend Power walks with us out of there, and she doesn't speak until we're well and truly away from the station. I make sure to take a bunch of unnecessary turns, and we cruise around the city for a long time to make sure we're not being followed. She said that there were a few guys on the carriage that were making her uneasy. About 3 or 4 of them were sitting in the back of the car and talking. They were describing my friend in exact detail, right down to what color nail polish she had on, what station she usually got off at, and what her car looked like. Her plan was to act like she was staying on till her stop, but leave right before the door closed on the stop before it. They were speaking German, not very quietly either. My friend grew up speaking 5 languages, one of them being German. She didn't take trains for a good 3 months following that incident. Not that I blame her. It's a bit dark, but sometimes we do theorize what they were planning on doing. I believe it might have been a human trafficking ring or something similar. The guys think gang rape, and my friend thinks a combination of both. I've always felt a bit silly making my friends invent coded sentences with me or calling them on the way home, because I like scaring myself silly. I honestly never thought it would come in handy. I'll never stop being thankful to this subreddit for making me overly cautious. I might have lost my best friend that night. I really am very grateful. I hate the fact that I have a story to even post to this subreddit, but it goes to show you when living in a major metropolitan city, you never know what walks of life you'll pass by, or drop off, I suppose. In 2003, I was a 16-year-old employee at an urban clothing store here on the south side of Chicago. At the time, I had a manager who was in his early 20s, by the name of Anthony. Anthony was a pretty arrogant and obnoxious, but overall, he was a pretty cool guy. I used to kind of give him crap and tease him when it came to approaching the ladies because he always seemed timid or too aggressive. I was and still am a ladies' man, so yeah, I was being an asshole. After working at this place for about 3 months, Anthony asked me if I would drop him off at home. It wasn't far from the direction I was headed in, so I dropped him off maybe twice a week for the next month or so. Now let me tell you, these car rides were quite uncomfortable. This guy, as much as we spoke at work, would not speak and sort of just kept looking straight. It got to the point that his awkwardness went from entertaining. I was 16. Most awkward people are interesting to teenagers. To straight creepy. Fast forward 3 to 4 years later, I'm watching the news as they go into detail of a horrific crime committed by a Comcast installation worker. Apparently, the Comcast worker entered 2 homes. He was due for an installation, raped, beat, and strangled 2 women. The real unfortunate thing is this happened on 2 different occasions, and after the first murder, the gentleman was arrested and questioned, but released and sent back to work, which allowed him to strike again. As the picture of his mugshot flashed the screen, I froze. It was Anthony. Now, growing up on the south side of Chicago, I have grown up and befriended a fair share of people who grew up to be murderers, but this took the cake for the craziest. I and a friend were talking about this girl's sleepover that we went to at school. It was all a manner of messed up. I think we must have been 11 or 12, and this girl was having a sleepover for her birthday. She was part of our group and we were excited, as we have never even been to this particular friend's house before. Our parents put an amazing amount of effort into the party. There was a buffet, a barbecue, cake, and even a clown. We were kind of embarrassed by the clown. We thought we were too old and it was just kind of awkward, but that was nothing compared to the dad's party games. First one, find the 50 pence. He hid 50 pence pieces around the house and we had to find them. Only he was chasing us and hooting and really screaming, like a hyperactive child. Again, we were embarrassed, but the birthday girl seemed to be having a good time, so we pretended to be in the spirit of things. Then there was the wish game. He wanted us to sit on his knee and tell him a wish. Now I'm really uncomfortable, and I could tell my friend is as well, but the birthday girl's on her dad's knee, telling him her wishes. Before we knew it, he was looking at my friend, patting at his lap. At the time, I thought my friend put in commendable effort not to look horrified. But looking back, there is no way in heck that he could have thought she was comfortable sitting on his knee. She sits on his knee, mumbles her wish, then it's my turn. Fool I am, because I thought I would get a pass being a boy, but no such luck. He's patting his knee looking at me, so I sit there and told him a wish. Nothing overtly sinister happened, but the whole thing put me and my friend a little at ease. After that came the cellar game. That's what he called it, and I'm thinking, heck no. I'm not going into a cellar with this creepy old man, and I can tell my friend is almost panicking at the thought. But then the dad takes up a rug, and there's a trapdoor under it, leading to the cellar, and I'm thinking, well, that's not the coolest thing. So we go down in the cellar, and truth be told, it was pretty cool at first. The dad had a candle, and that was the only light with the door closed. It was a small concrete room, and we sat on the floor while the dad told us creepy stories. I got the feeling these weren't age-appropriate stories, and our parents wouldn't have been happy if they had been there. And that made it all the more cooler. He's telling his story, getting to the creepy reveal bit, and then he blows out the candle. We are plunged into absolute darkness. I'm laughing and shouting, as is the birthday girl. My friends are really laughing. She actually sounds panicked. We get out of the cellar, and I'm saying how cool that was, but my friend looks really upset. Before bed, I managed to catch her alone and ask her whether she's alright. She tells me that after the dad blew out the candle, he tickled her in the dark, kind of put his head into her neck. She's really frightened and makes me promise I'll stay awake with her in case the dad does something. My friend's asleep, as is the birthday girl, and I'm really tired, but my friend made me promise, and the truth is, I feel like a knight in shining armor. I must stay awake to protect my friend, and lo and behold, I can hear someone creeping up the stairs. Slowly, like they're trying to not make a noise. And then the door opens, and the dad sticks his head around the door. He stays like that for what seems like ages, at least 2 or 3 minutes, just watching. He mustn't notice me because I'm not making an effort to pretend to be asleep. I'm just watching him, watching her, my friend. He then walks into the room and over to my friend. He just kind of stands over her, watching her. I'm completely freaked out, and despite feeling like a knight in shining armor 10 minutes ago, I now have no idea what to do, and I can feel pinpricks behind my eyes. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I let it go and made a noise. At this, the dad looks my way. I remember his eyes going really wide, and then he sort of scurried really fast out of the room. My heart was trip-hammering away, and I was looking at my friend wanting to wake her up. I didn't, though, and at some point I must have fallen asleep because I woke up the next morning. To put this into context, I'm an 18-year-old girl living in New Zealand. I suffer from anxiety and shut down in stressful situations and become rather overwhelmed when I'm not sure how to deal with something. This story happened yesterday while I was waiting at my bus station to catch a bus home. I'd had a long day at work and my legs were in pain, and all I wanted to do was get home and watch some YouTube in bed. It was getting dark and the sun was almost completely down. As I was listening to some music in a rather deserted area of the bus station, a man considerably larger than myself sauntered up and sat down directly next to me on the bench, which I didn't think much of. To put this into perspective, I'm roughly 55 kilograms. He must have been at least 100 and could have easily overpowered me. I noticed out of the corner of my eye that this man was staring at me and began to feel a little uncomfortable, but put it down to him looking at my mask. It's rather nondescript and just black. I ignored this and acted busy on my phone to avoid talking. As I said, I had a long day at work. The man began to talk, and I pulled out my AirPod to listen to what he was saying to me. The AirPod fell and landed on the ground, to which he picked it up for me, held onto it, and stared at it for a few seconds before handing it back. I was already getting bad vibes from this man. The conversation went something like this. Wow, your eyes are beautiful. Did you get them from your mom or dad? My mom, I guess. I kept my eyes short to try to signify I wasn't in the mood for talking, but he continued. What bus are you catching? Where do you live? I laughed nervously and told him I didn't feel very comfortable sharing where I lived, but I told him it was farther up north. He then said, Why? It's not like I'm going to rape you. Isn't it really fancy up there? This where I was beginning to feel very seriously uncomfortable and began to shake. He asked if I had a boyfriend, to which I said yes, and he proceeded to ask if I planned to marry him, to which I laughed and said yes. Well, it kind of sounds like you're just rooting him. Are you sure you want to marry him? I was shocked and looked at him before telling him again, yes, I do plan to marry my partner. How old are you? I don't know what came over me, but I told him I was 21 to try to make it come across that I was old enough to stand up for myself. Are you on the pill? I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable sharing that and don't see why you need to know. Oh, so you use condoms instead, huh? I wanted to walk away, but I was grounded to the bench and couldn't move a muscle if I tried. I was uncomfortable and confused as to why he was asking these questions. Do you have somebody waiting for you at the bus stop, or are you walking home? How far do you live from the stop? This is the question that made everything click into place, and I realized that this guy had horrible intent. He's not being friendly. This man is going to follow me home and either try to assault me or kidnap me in some way. I started to really panic and started desperately looking for onlookers. A young man, possibly my age, walked out of the public bathroom last and had overheard this conversation and was looking at the predator rather skeptically. I knew then I'd at least have someone to help if I just asked for it. I didn't. By this point, I recalled a video from r/ about a highly pregnant woman and her daughter being followed to their car in an empty car park, in the dark by an older man. This lady was stressfully trying to find her keys in her purse as this man was standing beside her daughter on the opposite side of the car, making small talk with them. He got impatient and walked away before she found her keys. Someone commented on her submission saying this was a popular thing and that he was waiting for her to unlock the car so he could get in and control her via threats for children. It occurred to me that I should skip my bus and catch another one at a later time. I did this exactly. He kept asking where I live, and I continued to refuse to tell him where. He also continued to ask how far I live from the stop and if my partner was waiting for me. I deflected all of his questions, and after 40 minutes he began to get grumpy and walked away from the situation. He wasn't there to catch a bus at all, but to prey on a young woman at a bus stop. I caught my bus about 10 minutes after he left, and I ran home where I completely broke down and cried in the arms of my partner. This morning I was so stressed. I contemplated taking the day off work and staying in bed the rest of the day. I was petrified. I didn't, by the way. I'm at work posting this now. I was at my mom's house, which was a basement apartment of a house. My mom was an alcoholic and drug addict, so typically had very unsavory characters around. I was about 8 years old. Friday. My mom had this guy, Nino, come around 2 to 3 times before. She went upstairs to the main part of the house to cook dinner. I was left downstairs with this guy, whom she met a handful of times partying. We were both sitting on the sectional couch. He was in the corner seat, feet up on the couch, with work boots on. Lounging. I was sitting on the cushion next to him, but with an arm's length between us. He was staring at me with a half smile and asked me a few random questions about school. I stared straight ahead at the TV. I don't remember the questions, but even at 8, I was very intuitive due to always having to observe and be on guard in my surroundings. I remember being very creeped out and afraid to move too obviously. Then he took the back of his fingers and then rubbed them up and down my arm in a slow motion on my bare skin. He was flirting with an 8-year-old. My mom calls us up for dinner about this time, and I guess he leaves shortly after. I was scared and didn't want to be around him again. On Sunday, my mom's other partying friend Jim comes over early, knocks on the door and asks to speak with my mom at the top of the driveway. I overheard him tell her basically that she needs to stay away from Nino because he's told Jim that he had his eye on me and he wanted to do stuff to me. My mom argues with him and is basically like, yeah right, no way, you're being dramatic. Jim is pleading with her and she doesn't believe him. Cool. A week later, my mom, my younger brother, and I were in her coworker's car, headed to her job. My mom was reading the newspaper and said, wow, Nino had been arrested for breaking into a home and sexually assaulting someone. I was shook. For months later, I struggled to sleep. We were in the basement apartment and there was a large sliding door and a ground level window in the bedroom. I was afraid he would get out of jail and I would see him in the window coming for me. 3 years ago, October in Minnesota, I had just started dating my now wife. I was obsessed with working out and asked her if she would like to use one of my guest passes at the YMCA. She begrudgingly agreed, and we started heading to the closest YMCA near her house. We were a couple of miles away from the gym, with my wife driving south on a busy street, when I noticed on the other side of the road heading north, a woman was walking on the sidewalk while holding something. Next to her, driving slowly on the shoulder of the road, was an F-350. The hairs on my neck stood up, and I shuddered after seeing them. My whole body had goosebumps. I told my wife that she needed to do a U-turn so we could see what was going on. We did the U-turn and got behind the F-350. I noticed immediately that the woman was barefoot and holding a baby wrapped in a blanket. I got out of the car and I told my wife to stay in the car and to call the police if anything happened. When I started walking towards the woman, the first thing I noticed was that she was barefoot. With it being October in Minnesota, the temperature was around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so nobody would be walking around without shoes and socks on. When I got closer to her, I saw the baby was only wearing a diaper wrapped up in a thin blanket. As I got closer, I could hear the guy in the truck yelling at the woman to please get in the truck. Get in the truck now. I finally reached the woman and asked her if she was okay and if she needs help. She said yes and that the guy wouldn't leave her alone though. Right then, a different woman started jogging past. I forgot my phone in the car, so I asked the woman jogging if she had the cell phone and if she could call the police, which she did immediately. I turned around to face the truck and I see the man getting out. As he is walking towards us, he is now pleading with the woman to get in the truck with him. I positioned myself between him and the woman, and he stopped when he was about 3 feet away from me. I told him that he wasn't going to come any closer and that the police were coming. Now, while the guy stopped walking towards us, he completely ignored me and didn't acknowledge what I just said. This is where it gets a little bit weird. The two of them start having a conversation that made zero sense with me standing between them. He said, "Honey, just get in the truck and come home." She said, "You kicked me out and told me to leave." "No, I didn't. I came upstairs and you and the baby were gone." She said, "You never let me leave," opposite of what she just said, and never let me do anything and never let me spend any of our money. "We don't have any money. Our credit cards are maxed out. You don't have shoes on and our baby is cold. Please, let's just go." She yelled, "I'm never coming home with you. You don't let us do anything ever." At this point, 2 police cars showed up with 4 cops. 1 cop spoke with the man, 1 with the woman, and the other 2 cops took statements from both the jogger and me. I'm not sure what took place that day with the couple and the baby. I stepped in because I had automatically assumed that some sort of abuse was taking place where the woman was trying to escape him. Maybe that was happening, or maybe the woman was having a mental breakdown. I'll never know. Either way, one of the strangest 10 minutes of my life. I literally just made this Reddit profile for the purposes of typing this story out. I look to gain nothing from it. All I really want to do is raise awareness of some of the creepy things that go on. I see far too many dating app horror stories. I'm 23 female and I've been single for a while. I go out on dates very rarely, but I just recently moved to a new city. I've been struggling with loneliness from not knowing anyone, and I don't have any real friends from work yet, so I took things to Bumble and Tinder. After maybe a week of swiping, I eventually came across a dude that I matched with. He was really cute and had a good job, had similar interests as me, and was the same age. Should have known better. We talked for about a week. After a couple of days, we exchanged numbers. We talked about life, about our jobs, and he was sweet. He gave me assurance and told me that a new move could be scary, but that putting myself out there was a good step in the right direction. He did get strange with me at one point, asking me things like what color bra and underwear I was wearing. I told him I wasn't quite ready to talk like that. He agreed it was out of line and apologized. Didn't think much else of it. After about a week, he wanted to meet up in person. He wanted it to be in a public place so that I would feel safe. He told me that he would take me to dinner, and if I wanted, after we could grab a beer. Sounded like a fun night to me. He wanted to meet outside of a dive shop, which I thought was a little bit strange. It's winter where we are, but it's one of those US states that doesn't really see cold winters, so I didn't give it a great amount of thought. The shop is located near a public park, so there are a good amount of people there. After looking for a bit, I spotted him talking to some people. I walked up to him and gave him a hug. Not like super romantic, but more than a platonic and less than a partner kind of hug. To my disappointment, he just sort of placed his palms on my back like he was put off, but he did give me a small smile and said, "How are you?" I tried making it work, and I told him he looked a lot cuter in person and that I was happy that he asked me out. I was extremely nervous. His eyes widened and he turned to ask the group he was previously talking to who put me up to it. With no expression of humor, they all just calmly denied anything. He then asked me who told me to do this. I was confused. I told him that we had been talking on Tinder, and he told me he didn't have a Tinder, and even went up as far as showing me that he didn't have it downloaded. He apologized for the mix-up. I showed him the profile and he seemed equally confused. I turned away and started walking back to my car. I was so humiliated. Then I got a text message from a number that I had been talking to that simply read, "Ha ha ha." I could not even fathom that. I attempted to call the number, but it had been disconnected. By the time I got home, the profile had been deleted. I blocked the number just in case. I had some of the photos saved that the profile sent me. I did a reverse image search on Google and found the Facebook profile of the guy I actually met. His name wasn't the same, and he was actually a few years older. I also figured out he was a dive instructor at the shop. I felt so violated. I did send the guy a message, the actual one, and apologized for the inconvenience. I explained everything to him and why I was acting that way. I gave him as much of the story as I felt necessary. To my surprise, he actually responded back and said he was sorry and that he was blindsided by the encounter. He did offer to take me out for a drink to make up for the mess, but I simply have severe trust issues now. This happened to me in the fall of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. My friend, let's call him Jay, and I were on our way from New York City to Michigan to do a couple of vinyl flooring jobs and also scout some potential properties to renovate and flip. We were also using his work truck, which was a Ford F-150. We decided to leave in the evening and make the drive all night to get to our destination. We were on the I-80, which is a 2-lane highway that passes through the mountains of Pennsylvania. This highway is far from safe. It's elevated in mountainous terrain. There are constant turns, and it snakes around a lot, so if you go through the guardrail, you're flying down in the darkness of a ditch. Anyways, I'm driving while Jay is trying to get some sleep. I stop at a service plaza to refuel and run into the shop real quick to get some drinks and snacks for the road. It's a little bit past midnight, and I notice another car refueling a few pumps from us. It was a red or burgundy SUV, I think a Mazda, but I paid it and the driver no mind as I ran back to the truck. Fast forward 30 minutes later, and I'm cruising in the left lane doing 90. Then I noticed the headlights behind us. It was the same red SUV from the service plaza. I first didn't think anything of it, but it dawned on me that this guy had been following me since the service plaza. I decided to do a quick test to see if I'm being tailed or not. Since I was doing 90 consistently, I slowed down to 70 and waited to see if he passed me. The guy also slowed down with me, so now I'm on alert. I wake Jay up and tell him the situation. "Hey bro, I think this guy is following us." My friend Jay is an ex-Army Ranger who was a lot more vigilant than me and also crazier. Immediately, he says, "Oh, that's the car from the gas station. I noticed the guy was looking at you extra hard when you passed him." Okay, switch lanes and see what he does. So I switch lanes and the SUV does so as well. Okay, slow down to a stop and pull over on the shoulder and see what he does. I listen to Jay and slow down to a complete stop on the shoulder of the highway. This freaking lunatic slows down and parks behind us. "Wow, this guy has a lot of balls. He's definitely got a gun on him," Jay exclaimed. "Okay, pull out and gun it to 90. "I have an idea," he says. I take stock of what we have in the truck that could be used as weapons. We had a hatchet and a machete, and each of us had a folding knife on us but no firearms. I pull off the shoulder and stay in the right lane as I press down hard on the gas. Jay wants me to brake check the guy, so he crashes into the back of us and then charge the car with the machete and a hatchet and hope for the best. At this point, he isn't an active threat yet. If he tries to ram the truck or shoot at it, then it's a different story, but right now I decided against it. Jay looks around the inside of the truck and grabs a high-powered handheld spotlight and opens the back window of the truck. Okay, I'm going to light his ass up and see if we can get a good look at him. So he turns on the spotlight, and guess what? The guy's front windows are heavily tinted, so we can't get a look at his face. "Yo Jay, I'm going to switch lanes. See if you can aim at the side. Maybe his side windows aren't tinted." So I quickly swerve onto the left lane. As I do that, Jay turns on the spotlight again. I make sure to turn my heads toward the SUV at the same time. For the 3 seconds we had him illuminated, I will never forget the look of this guy. He was tall, at least over 6'3", because he was hunched over the steering wheel. He had the face of Uncle Fester from the Addams Family and the hair of Kramer from Seinfeld, along with a 5 o'clock shadow. Once he saw that I wasn't alone and that we knew what he looked like, he turned at a truck rest stop area. To this day, Jay and I get into a debate about whether I should have brake checked the guy or not. He's under the impression that the guy was a potential serial killer and that he ended up finding another victim instead of being killed by us, and possibly a trucker sleeping in his cab. I've analyzed the situation and concluded that this guy's intentions were definitely evil. How evil? Robbery at the minimum, kidnapping and murder at the worst. Thankfully, I was able to never find out. What do you guys think? This happened about 15 years ago, and I still have shivers down my spine when I think about it. I was a student at a small university where everybody knew everyone. All of the students in my class were very close to each other. There weren't many of us, so solidarity was the norm. During the third year, 15 Chinese students joined our class, 14 girls and only 1 man. The girls were nice, and we welcomed them with open arms. They integrated very quickly. The man, meanwhile, hardly ever spoke. He was very secretive, dressed quite extravagantly, and always hypertense or stressed. My closest friends and I tried to push him out of his comfort zone a bit. We used to help each other with studies. We thought that was normal. We quickly realized that it was a mistake. When he spoke to us, which was very rare, his words were incomprehensible and he was completely delirious. He always told us about his fascination for death, how music made him want to kill people, and how he hated women. We tried not to judge him in just work, but he became more and more uncomfortable with us, and every day he told us more and more horrible things. After a while, it was rumored that he was harassing a lot of girls in our university. He managed to get their phone numbers and was calling them day and night, or he was following them down the street to their house. It was very creepy and scary for everyone. One girl in particular really didn't appreciate him following her and filed a complaint against him. He was questioned by the police as well as by the headmaster of the university and asked to go to the hospital for psychiatric treatment. We didn't see him for a few months after that, so we thought he was off for treatment. Then one day, suddenly he reappeared in class, but his gaze had become extremely disturbing. He stared at people for 10 minutes or more, as if he were going to jump their throats. I felt very bad that day. And then one day, I learned that from a friend that he had come to the university with a huge butcher's knife. Apparently, he wanted to kill the girl who reported him to the police, but since she wasn't in school that day, he went to see her mother, who worked as a secretary in our department, and he killed her, slaughtered without any remorse. Some teachers present in the building tried to stop him, and they were seriously injured as well. Finally, he was able to be subdued and put in a psychiatric hospital for the rest of his life. This story traumatized us all, and even years later, we never talk about it between us. It was absolutely horrible. After that, I left university because it had become unbearable. This was one of the most shocking situations I've ever come across. My stepdaughter and I were chit-chatting on our way home when I pulled into a grocery store shopping center that had some gas pumps. I made an incorrect entrance into the shopping center and had to mistakenly drive around the Chase Bank to get to the gas station. As I round the corner to pump the gas, I see a nice new Mustang stopped in front of me, so I cannot get through. It's only a few seconds before I see a teenage girl get out from the passenger side wearing nothing but a hoodie. She has black pants and panties in her hands and walks swiftly right past my truck. She is clearly distressed, crying, and 100% just as young as my stepdaughter, 15-ish. It took me a second to realize what I just saw. I looked at my stepdaughter and said, "What the heck? That girl didn't even have pants on." I put my truck in reverse and she is getting dressed behind some bushes. I rolled down my window and yelled to her, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need some help?" She yells back, "Just leave me alone and mind your own business." At this point, the Mustang is no longer in sight and I can see my truck says 2-mile range before it is out of gas. I had music playing and didn't hear the truck being on empty until after I picked my daughter up from school and was talking. So I got to the pump and started pumping gas, trying to look for that Mustang. Then I see it circle back towards the girl. I immediately stopped the pump and got back in to drive that direction. I fire up my camera to get his license plate number. I at first couldn't see the girl anymore, but the Mustang is now double parked near the bank. As I pull up behind the car to get a picture of the plates, my stepdaughter says that she can see the girl, and she's back in the passenger seat. The Mustang has tinted windows, but it's like 3 p.m. The sun is shining, and they weren't super dark, so I could see 2 people in the front seat and notice big hand gestures and movement in the car. They were clearly fighting and arguing. I don't even know if they noticed that I had driven past them to snap a photo at that point. After that, I just said, screw it, it's time to call the police, my stepdaughter said. But she said she didn't need help. Are you sure? I was like, girl, if you were in this situation and 2 women saw you half naked crying, walking away from a man or boy in a car, while carrying your clothing, I'd hope they would have called too, no matter what you said to them. We also live in Arizona. My truck said it was 98 degrees. She was a very thin girl with faded out, grown out black hair. She had a hoodie on. Things weren't really adding up. Who wears a hoodie in 100-degree weather? If it was a simple argument between a young high school couple, why not throw your pants on before walking through a parking lot completely commando? Plus, in case you didn't know, Arizona is sort of known for sex trafficking and having a large homeless or drug-addicted population. There are these blue pills, I think a type of fentanyl that a lot of young kids get started on called blues, that are usually smoked and it just destroys a person. Not to mention the methamphetamine all over here also. By the end of my phone call with the police, the dispatcher that I was talking to said that an officer had arrived on scene and found the Mustang. She asked if they could call me later. I of course said yes. I don't know if that is good or bad, but I'll update if/when I get more information. Lastly, whenever I, 35 female, had sex in a car as a teen, it was always nighttime and we would always try and at least park in a secluded area. Especially not in front of a building that probably has many cameras inside and outside of it. Anyways, I hope she's okay. I hope it was a misunderstanding and not something more serious. But damn, what a creepy thing to witness on a Thursday afternoon with your kid. No less. Update. So the police gave me a follow-up call today. And wow, I kind of felt bad, but I also kind of don't. So the girl is indeed underage, a freshman in high school and the driver of the car. Her boyfriend is a senior in high school, but he unfortunately is 18, right? Because my stepdaughter and I both saw her without any pants or underwear on, it makes things more serious, obviously. The teens both said they were just having an argument and that I was not telling the truth about her walking away from the vehicle, crying, carrying her pants. Now because there was another person in my vehicle, they wanted permission to interview and get a statement from my stepdaughter about what she saw. I am not legally her guardian, so I could not give permission. I picked my husband up from the airport tomorrow morning, so he has to give permission. He said he will take her in to give a statement on Monday. Stepdaughter is willing to talk to police, so my husband called and set everything up. Because the girl is underage, they had to contact her mother when the police arrived at her boyfriend's car. Her mom and now the boyfriend's parents were the ones initially requesting our official statements regarding what we saw because of the conflicting stories. However, the police said it would be helpful to them as well if the stepdaughter could give her statement, as 2 witnesses are better than 1. The officers I talked to today said there are some additional moving parts involving the case that he cannot discuss with me because of the investigation. So unfortunately, I cannot answer everybody's questions, but he did say this might be an ongoing case depending on a few things that they aren't necessarily certain of yet. They both asked me several times if I was sure of what I saw and if I was certain enough to testify in a courtroom setting, as that could very well be where this is headed. I just said yes, I'm sure. I initially felt badly because kids in high school hook up all the time. I didn't want this boy getting into trouble or having to potentially register as a sex offender for the rest of his life because I was told to just mind my own business and didn't. However, the more officers that talked to me, the more I felt like the situation was potentially much heavier than all of that. So that's the update I have for now. It's not much, but I'm sure to have called and reported it after all. If I can give another update in the future, I will. Thanks for all the encouragement too. I did inform the local police, and there was a PSA put up by the MSP a few weeks ago regarding a similar topic. I was not able to record the man, but I have taken the time to educate all of my friends who work in that area. Thank you, everyone. I am trying to find other people around the same area as me. I live in southwest Michigan, about an hour away from Grand Muir State Park. This park has had two semi-recent attacks only 6 months apart. One incident included a female who was knocked unconscious and woke up hours later. She discovered she was injured. The other incident also included a female. She was attacked while walking her dog. Both women gave a description to the local police department. The descriptions from both victims had many similarities. These attacks happened in April and September in the same year, 2024. I enjoy hiking and geocaching in my free time. With the increase of attacks in the area, I tried to avoid Grand Mere. I found a neat little park with many geocaches hidden around the park. It was far enough away from Grand Mere where I felt comfortable to go off on my own. With my pocket knife, of course. About an hour into my adventure, I found myself a bit off the main trail. I was looking for a geocache. It was a very calm and quiet day. Usually, you can hear other people walking around. Birds, animals, and the waves from Lake Michigan. But I was met with an eerie silence. I couldn't help but feel as if I were being watched. I stood up and started to look around. My eyes locked with a man watching me from the main trail. Once our eyes met, he started walking towards me. I got this strange feeling that I need to get out of there. Being a woman in her 20s, alone in the woods with a strange man watching me was not ideal. I started walking back towards the main trail. My goal was to get some distance between the two of us. He blocked the path and tried to talk to me. I tried to keep walking, but he blocked the trail, making it hard to go around him. The path was surrounded by prickers, mud, etc. The man began to talk to me. He asked me if I was searching for mushrooms or if I had lost something. I explained to him I was geocaching but needed to get back to my car. The man gave me a creepy smile and continued to block me from continuing to walk to my car. Finally, I was able to end our strange conversation, choosing to take another path since he would not let me pass him. As I started walking away, I looked over my shoulder to see him still staring at me, just watching me walk further away. When I finally got back to the main trail, I stopped for a moment to look around to see if I could spot the man anywhere. I did not see him. I continued to walk back to my car. At this point, I can see the parking lot ahead of me. I only had a 4th mile or so to the parking lot. The man appeared from a small side trail and started walking behind me. As I walked faster, his footsteps started sounding faster. I looked over my shoulder again. He's about 200 feet away from me now. I walk faster and check on the man again. Now probably 100 feet. It's obviously apparent that he's trying to catch up. In that moment, my phone started ringing. My best friend was FaceTiming me. As I answered, I held up my phone as if I were trying to show my friend the park I found. Once the man realized I was on the phone, his pace slowed. I made it back to the parking lot and got into my car. I noticed the man was lingering into the parking lot until I was fully in my car. He slinked away towards a different set of trails until he vanished from my sight. The man seemed to be in his late 20s or 30s, average build, darker hair with green eyes. Has anybody else encountered a strange man around the area? And if you're reading this now and you were the strange man that followed me that day, following people in the woods is a horrible hobby. Please adopt a normal lifestyle. I used to fight with my parents a lot as a teenager, and that led to them kicking me out once I had graduated high school. I was almost 19 at this point, which for me wasn't a problem. I had my own job and my own car, and my friend's parents had a spare bedroom they were willing to let me rent out, so it worked out fine. This being said, I will change names, so let's call my friend Kelly and her mom Lena and her dad Kenneth. Kenneth and Lena had a lot of weird friends due to the fact that they were partiers. A lot of these friends were really nice people, just weird, and you could tell had issues such as drugs or criminal pasts. There was one guy though, that was just beyond weird. Just someone who, even though I didn't know him, just made my skin crawl. We'll call him Joey. I came home from work one day, and the only person at our house was Joey. As soon as I walked in, he said hello and then made a comment about how beautiful I was. Now, I don't consider myself good looking in the slightest. I'm decent, even average at best. So I just kind of said thanks and walked off to do my normal routine. As I was making my lunch and cleaning up my mess, I felt someone staring at me. It was definitely Joey, obviously. He'd followed me into the kitchen and was just standing in the only doorway, staring at me. I asked if I could get him anything, but he just shook his head and continued staring. This made me feel so weird, so I just kind of nudged him over and headed straight for my room and locked the door until I heard my roommates get home. Joey left around dinner time and I thought it was fine and went about my nightly routine and went to bed as usual. But he must have came back because he was sitting at the breakfast table when I went to get my cereal. Again, the whole time he was just staring at me, so I ended up eating in my room. Friday night rolled around and Lena, Kenneth, and Kelly told me they were going to throw a huge party and I should invite whoever I want. I had a feeling Joey would be there, so I invited the most intimidating male person I know. My neighbor slash friend Charles. He was a huge guy, 6'5", and if I guess, I'd say close to 300 pounds. He was also covered nearly head to toe in tattoos and was an ex-Hell's Angel, but he also was the type that, unless provoked, wouldn't hurt a fly. I explained while inviting him the day before about Joey. What he told me scared the shit out of me. He knew Joey and knew that he was on the run from the police for assaulting a teenage girl the year before and that I needed to stay far away from him. You think that's where the scary part ends? No, it actually gets worse. I'm usually not a cop caller, but I went straight home and packed my things and left for a safe place and called the police. Now here's the worst part. When they arrested him, they looked through his phone and it had multiple pictures of me on it. Most of them were me sleeping or in the shower. He also had texts to another person about me and about what he and this other person wants to do with me. I no longer talk to Kelly or her parents, and when someone gives me a bad vibe, I instantly get away from them. I will forever be grateful to Charles because he probably saved my life. I'm a 25-year-old male. I started a job at a company that makes lenses for glasses, and immediately I was introduced to Nate, an awkward guy around my age that seemed like he had good intentions. He was nice enough, but I figured that most people humored him when it came to talking to him. I was convinced that he was on the spectrum in the realm of Asperger's. I've had friends in the past who have had Asperger's, and I didn't really mind. Besides, we seemed to like the same things, including Dungeons and Dragons. My D&D group was small, and we wanted more people, and knowing that he was into it, I invited him to come join. My now wife and fiance immediately grew uncomfortable when he came into our home to make his character, and when it came to actually playing sessions, another girl at our table also expressed that she was uncomfortable. I didn't feel great about it, so after about 3 or 4 sessions, we kicked him out and just continued playing. But of course, I still had to see him at work, which led to him always acting sad around me, but I wasn't going to give in. Eventually, I kept telling him that I was starting another group and he could join that one. His pity party was starting to annoy me, so I said whatever to keep him at bay. One day at work, he had the day off, and the following weekend, neither he nor my coworkers saw this as strange. But then when Monday came, he still didn't show up. Tuesday, no show. This was very unlike him because he was particularly a teacher's pet. Soon, one of my coworkers was moving around the warehouse with a phone in her hand, stopping people and sharing the news. Nate had been arrested in North Dakota as he attempted to meet an underage person for you-know-what. We were all in disbelief because that's the first feeling that hits you. You don't want to believe somebody like that could live in your town, let alone work right beside you. Indeed, he was in contact with a minor over the internet and set up a meeting at a park with the exact kind of attentions that you're thinking about. The police were tipped off as the teacher just happened to see the messages on the girl's phone. I nearly puked when I heard the news. He was in my home and made comments about my kids being cute, especially my daughter, which definitely made me more sick. He would talk to me sometimes about wanting a girlfriend and how he was just waiting for the right one to come along, somebody in his church group, and now it scares me to think how old this girl was. One of my friends at work mentioned how he went to install a washer and dryer at Nate's house, and when looking around, he was yelled at by Nate to not go upstairs. Not in a, oh, that's my room and I prefer no one go up there type of vibe. More like there's something up there I don't want you to see type of thing. Well, he was arrested and put in prison, like I said, and remains there to this day as far as I'm concerned. Just goes to show that you can't really know everybody, and that's what is truly scary. When I was a young med fledgling, I had to do some of my practices in our hospital's ER unit. The system was easy. Students were paired with a doctor, and each pair had their own office to receive triaged patients. If the day were busy, the pairs would be separated, and students could work on their own in a separate room, with their tutor coming near the end of the checkup to see the patient themselves and make corrections. It was one of those busy days where I met Mr. Javier. It was maybe a Wednesday afternoon. The place was pretty full, so we were all working at maximum capacity. I called the next patient, a 48-year-old man that gave "I am in pain" as his reason for consulting the nurse. He comes in and, well, looks like a normal dude. Probably 1.75 meters tall, not fit but not fat, Black going gray hair, nothing out of order. He explains he has been having testicular pain for about a week, and he swears he can feel some nodules. No other health concerns or background. A very average case in a resume, so I move on, put on my gloves and start doing the physical. For obvious reasons, I need to touch his testicles in search of the nodules or any other abnormalities. I was doing just that when the first red flag came to my mind. He came because he was feeling pain, but not once even flinched during the evaluation. Something, well, weird. Me. I can't feel any nodules. Mr. Javier. Javier, I am sure they're in there. Let me try. The man starts touching himself, trying to find the nodules. It is hard to explain, but while not directly sexual, his movements were not exactly innocent either. Too slow, too showy. He stretched his scrotum way too much, accidentally kept bringing his dick up and down with his hands, etc. It was like he was trying to show off his genitalia. He suddenly took my hand and dragged it to a place that I will only say was very close to another anatomical feature I don't think I need to mention. In here, doctor. Here it is. I was a little bit startled, but I tried to feel any mass without success. He gave some extra indications for me to look at, but the result was the same. All normal. By the end of it, I may have spent about 5 or more minutes with my hands in this man's genitals without finding anything abnormal, and I could see he was getting a little too happy, if you know what I mean. Nevertheless, while everything was kind of weird, there is nothing frankly scary yet. Me. Mr. Javier, I can't find them, but I will send you an ultrasound to check if anything is fine. Javier. Okay, doctor. Me. Please wait a second. My professor will check you too. I went looking for Dr. Michael, my tutor, so that he could do the corrections. I found him and told him the basics of the case, but things started to get extremely rare when he entered the room where Javier was waiting. Dr. Michael said, Mr. Javier, what are you doing here again? Dr. Michael, it's great seeing you. What can I say? The heinous pain keeps coming back no matter what I do. The last time I gave you an order for the urologist. Has he already seen you? Yes, doctor, but he didn't find a thing. Really? Did he send you any exams? No, not at all. Sure. Okay. Dr. Fatco sent an MRI instead of the ultrasound. Let's see if we can find something this time. I printed the order and gave it to the man and sent him to the imaging unit. When we were alone, Dr. Michael asked me in a very serious tone, Did he do or say anything sexual to you? Tell me the truth. What? No, why do you think that? Did you see his medical record? No, I was ashamed. It was a very rookie mistake. Well, open it, he said. I did as told, and surprise, surprise. That was the 11th time Javier had come to the hospital with the same story in the last 5 months. Every log said basically the same, and in all cases, imaging was done without finding anything. I don't understand. He told me this was recent, that it hadn't happened before. He always says that. He also says he is in pain but never shows it. Remember what I said before? I've seen him 7 of that 11 times, and in 5 of them, he came when one of you was left alone. I was confused until one of your classmates told me he had been quite flirty with him during one of the checkups. So, you say he is a perv? I asked. Can't be sure, but I know the man is faking the symptoms and has nothing there. Even if he did, he doesn't care at all. See in the record, there is no urology consultation. He lied about going. To clarify, most, if not all the patients we saw in the ER were later sent on our own ambulatory services. So it would be exceptional if an external urologist saw him. What should I do? I asked. Don't worry. Go to my consultation room and work there. I'll take this one and do his reevaluation. You sure he didn't do anything? Well, he was a little bit exhibitionistic, but nothing more. Okay, thanks. You can go. I don't know what happened after that. I just felt very uncomfortable about the whole deal to bring it up to Dr. Michael again, or to find out which of my classmates were the ones that saw Javier on his previous visits. But I know after that day, I developed a healthy distrust of what my patients tell me. And I know this is not that sub, Mr. Javier. I really hope we never meet again. Sometime in March 2025, I was delivering a catering order from my job to a doctor's office. As I was walking in the door to enter the vestibule, an older, kind of rough-looking man opened the door for me and helped me get through. When I got inside, I kindly told him thank you and went back to the front desk. While approaching the desk, the man that opened the door for me started trying to grab my bags out of my hands, repeatedly saying, "I hope they tipped you good." In my job description, I am supposed to be the only one touching the bags until I am given instructions by the receiving party. When I get to the desk where 3 women are sitting, I ask them where they want their food set up. One of them told me, "Through these doors all the way to the back on the left." The double doors had bright red letters. "Authorized personnel only." None of the women working there escorted me to the back. The same man that opened the door for me is still yanking bags from my hands while I'm trying to tell him I can get it. He insisted on helping me carry the bags. At this point, I thought he might have worked there because no one else tried to help or walk me to the back. We get to the back where another woman is waiting for me. I asked her if she wanted me to set everything up, and she told me she did. I started getting everything out, and the man that had taken the bags from me is getting stuff out too. When I finished setting up the table, I heard him ask the woman a question. Her response was no, but thank you, sir. At this point, I was fully aware that he did not work there. It didn't make sense for her to respond that way as if they were coworkers. He also clearly did not look like he worked with me, as I work in a uniform and he was in a grayish kind of dirty sweatsuit. I start walking to the exit to get ahead of him. It was through the long narrow hallway that he followed me through before, but I hoped I could get ahead of him because he had a bit of a limp. However, he beat me to it, so I tried to go around. He starts walking in a zigzag, cutting off any way that I could go to get around him. When we get to the end of the hall back to the double doors, he stopped and looked at me, so I went to open it and he stood really close behind me. We finally get back into the lobby and I start to leave. He stops me and goes, "Let me ask you something. Did they tip you good?" I told him I didn't know and was going to leave. He stops me again, starts the same way. "Let me ask you something." Then says, "Can I have $3 to get to the bus? I did help you carry that stuff back there." I told him I didn't have any cash on me, but I could go look in my car to find some. At this point, assuming he was homeless. He looks at me like I offended him and says, "Oh no, I'm 69 years old and I do not do that," as I've just offered to have sex with him or something in my car as a thank you for his help. I told him no and said I could look in my car for cash and bring it inside to him. He followed me outside. I tried to run to my car to leave, but at this point he was watching me. So instead, I grabbed $5 from my passenger's side and gave it to him. I tried to leave again and he stops me. "Let me ask you something. Why are you not in school?" I told him I wasn't in school. He walks closer to me. "Let me ask you something else. How old are you?" I lied and told him I was 26. Thought maybe he would back off, thinking I was older. He starts waving his arms in the air, making really loud sounds and laughing like he was shocked. He gets closer and says, "Well, let me tell you something. Don't get offended." He continues, "I thought you were maybe 19, trying to laugh it off." I told him I get that a lot and start to leave again. At that point, I had been able to pack up enough to get my passenger seat again. I jump in through the passenger side and get into the driver's seat, and he's walked closer to my car. I lock the doors and start to back up, look in my reverse camera, and he's standing behind my car with his phone out like he's taking pictures. During this entire interaction, because I was in my work uniform, he was able to get my name, my job, my work position, my car, and a picture of the driver's plate. I fully believed he was going to follow me back to my job, but thankfully he did not. When I got home and told my family what happened, somehow my mom knew somebody that had a similar experience with a man of the same description. I looked it up on Facebook and was able to find a picture, and sure enough, it was the same guy. A few days later, I ended up making a police report. Turns out he's not homeless at all. Has a whole job in a house. The cop told me this man has been doing the same thing for 20 years, only harassing women and scaring them into giving him money. People report him all the time and nothing ever happens to him. I grew up in a shady area and would rarely leave home after 7 to 8 p.m., as it was considered dangerous. Going into high school, I got a pit bull. He was a gentle giant who loved everyone and everything. He had some protection work training before he joined our family, but as he was getting older, he retired and I took him home with me. So back to the story. I was, at this time, 17 female, short and blonde, but very aware of my size. But having a big scary dog, if you will, I finally felt safe walking alone. And on that very night, I had to set out to take a longer walk as my dog, let's call him Meatball, really needed to run off some energy. I took him to the woods near my home, and we walked along a gravel path that was partly lit. It was around 11 p.m. and quite dark outside. As we walked, I became aware of the fact that there really wasn't anybody else around at all. We walked for about 10 or 15 minutes before a man turned up behind us. We continued to walk, and I noticed he is taking the same turns as me and Meatball. I sped up, feeling my heart beating in my chest. Meatball, who normally spent his time sniffing at the end of the leash, was now also very aware of the situation. He had slowed down and gotten so close to my leg with full focus on this man. I started turning at every turn I could, and the man followed, even though we were now walking in circles. He started getting closer and closer to us as, I am now sure he is following us. I remember something my father once told us. Never let someone follow you, as you are the most vulnerable from behind always. If you get in a situation where you can force your stalker to pass you, do it. I stopped and grabbed onto Meatball's leash. I leant back on the leash, acting as if it had to put my entire body weight in holding him back. Now I am aware that I, at this point in my life, looked small and weak, but as my father is an old veteran, I could fight before I could walk. And even holding Meatball back was not a task, as I was a lot stronger than I looked. While I called out, trying to sound as naive as I could, hoping that if I did have to fight, I would surprise him with my strength. Excuse me, my dog really does not like people, and I can't really hold him back when he lunges. If I step to the side, could you pass us so I have a chance at holding him back? As I say this, Meatball starts barking, growling and snapping towards the man, who is now stopped. He looks me up and down, stares at Meatball and turns around, not saying a word. He left pretty quickly, and I called my parents and asked them to meet me, as I now realized he could easily be hiding anywhere on our walk back. My dad showed up only a few minutes later, baseball bat in hand. Nothing really happened, but after being followed by this man at every turn I took for at least 35 minutes, I know this could have ended really badly if I had not had Meatball or my dad close by. This happened about 2 years ago in my hometown of Keno, Michigan. It's a town very far north, and while the landscape to the east of the town is very farmed and flat, the west of town is a very dark and forested area. Nearby, about 15 miles south, is the Roscommon State Park. People love to go camping out there, and it's safe and fun except for this instance. There was a husband and wife camping out near the middle of the state park in a small tent. It looked secluded from the newspaper article, but I guess not. At around 2 a.m. in the morning, a large man broke into the tent and beat them to death with a titanium baseball bat and a 4-inch switchblade. The police were alerted after a man hiking in the area smelled blood or decay or something and found them. He reported it to the police, and they ran their forensics, and it was in the paper the next morning. After this, everybody was on edge, but I didn't really care. It was autumn and hunting season for us up here. I was in the state park hunting with my Remington R25, a semi-automatic rifle, and .308 Winchester. I was hunting big game and needed a big gun. About 2 hours into my hunt, I came across a clearing and decided to soak in some of the rare sun that we get in that forest. I heard a twig break and ducked down behind a log, thinking it was an animal, but to my surprise I saw a man. I was about to get up and talk to him, but when he came into the light, I saw his ripped and bloody clothes and instantly backed down. There was no description of the killer in the paper, but I felt in my gut it was him. I readied my R25 at my side, about to light this man up if he made a move. He stared right in my direction, but there was no way he could see me, as I was behind cover. Eventually, about a minute later, he walked off away from my area and I dipped. Never went hunting out there again and have since upgraded my home defense solution. You never think it'll happen to you, but I was close to death. I could have just been another death, another statistic on some FBI document. When I female 21 was 17, I wanted to be an AU pair, and the only place close to me that I could go to as a 17-year-old was England. So I found this family, a mother with 2 kids, a boy and a girl. I messaged them and talked with the mother, and she seemed very interested and very nice. We set up a date for me to go, and that was that. When I got to the airport, I was very confused that they weren't there to pick me up. I messaged the mom to ask where they were and if it would take them long to get to me. She told me that she was on her way and she was stuck in traffic. I thought, okay, that's fair. She told me to go to the exit and wait. Then not long after, she told me that she was there and that she was in a blue car. I was looking around very confused since I couldn't really see any blue car there. When I finally found it, some other woman than the one I had been talking to walked out of the car and towards me. The instant I made eye contact with the mother, I got a long text from the woman I was supposed to work for, which basically said that her husband had come home from the country he worked in, and that they had fought because he didn't want an AU pair in the house, and for some reason she didn't want to tell me that, so she just gave me to her good friends who needed an AU pair. I was very confused and, by that time, a bit scared as well. It all seemed very weird, as if somebody were watching me and had been waiting for the right moment to send that text. The woman seemed very friendly, but was hurrying with things, like taking my stuff and putting them in her car while talking to me. I'm a bit nervous and non-confrontational by default, so I didn't really know what to do or say other than just follow her in what she was doing. When it was all done, she told me that we should get going, and I told her that I wasn't really comfortable with everything. She told me that she understood that, but that she really needed the help and also only had 2 children at home. We had to move fast because of the place she was parked, so we got into the car and started driving out of the airport pickup spot. The second we started moving, I told her that I was very uncomfortable with this and I really wanted to get out and stay at the airport. She seemed a bit upset by this and told me that sure she could drop me off, but she had to get out where we were because she could get a ticket for letting me out there or something. I didn't know if this was true, just what I was told. We drove for a few minutes, still on the airport grounds, and we stopped a bit away so I could get out and call my parents. I talked to them crying the whole time. I noticed that while I was talking to them, the woman was inside her car talking to a woman, the one I had been talking to, I presume. I didn't understand the language, so I can't say what they were talking about. When I was done talking, I got into the car again, and I told her that I really wanted her to let me out, and she kept asking me if I was sure that I didn't want to go into town with her. What if I didn't want her to drop me off at the shopping center? I of course told her no, that I really want her to just take me out by the airport, and let me out. She did, thankfully, and I went inside and talked with my parents. After this happened, I got some weird voice memos from her and 2 other people. I couldn't quite understand them, but it was very weird. My parents also tried contacting her, and she blocked them both. If you don't know, a lot of AU pairs are being treated very poorly, so for us to feel safe and secure, ensure that we don't get cheated out of pay or working more than we are allowed, we have to sign a contract. Later on, I found out that the contract she had been sent to me was fake and not really binding. I don't know how, but it wasn't legitimate. Plus her addresses she sent me were also fake, and she apparently didn't live there either. I found out later on in the city that I was in a bit of a hotspot for trafficking. I didn't know this until after this happened. A lot of sketchy stuff. I might be overthinking this one, and it might not be as bad as I think it was, but in the moment of it, I was sure something was going on, and I still kinda am. A lot of people seem to be confused as to why I got back in the car again. I'm sorry. We had driven a bit away from the airport to some hangars or whatever you call them so I could get out and call my parents. While I was out, I was only about 3 meters away from the car and the door was still ajar so I could hear the woman speaking on the phone. When I got back in, she was still talking with her but hung up after a minute or so. She had the lady on speaker, so that is why I could hear her. I asked her to drive me back to the airport, and that was when she tried convincing me to let her drive me into the city, and I told her no. All I have said in the comments. I now know how dangerous this could have been, getting back into the car with her, but I felt some sort of security that both my parents and 4 of my friends in the same city I was in knew what was going on. She drove me back to the airport parking lot so I could get on one of the buses to go back, since she would have to pay to get back in. For the backstory, my fiancé 24 and I 21 recently got an adorable 2-year-old German Shepherd back in the end of February. She's been a great addition to our family and she loves her mom so much. I've had many dogs in my childhood, but I've never had one as loyal or as smart as my current. Now this encounter happened a few weeks ago, but my mind still goes back to it every once in a while, so I thought I would share it here. My fiancé and I live together in an apartment complex, which is nice as it offers some nice amenities for our new pup, like a dog park and a large space of grass right outside of our apartment. We usually take our pup to this space of grass to let her run around and do her business whenever she needs. This one day though, my fiancé and I decided to take her out together and get some fresh air. It was a hot 90-degree plus day, so I was only wearing a sports bra and shorts, trying to combat the overwhelming heat. I am walking her and taking her up and down the hill until she gets done doing what she needs to when I notice her turn to where there are some cars parked. She is the type of dog who loves other dogs but doesn't care one bit about humans, so I assumed maybe there was another dog around. Instead of turning back to finish her business, she keeps her eyes on the cars, purposely positioning herself between me and the cars. A few seconds later, I watch as a man exits from around the cars, me not noticing him before because of some foliage. During all of this, my fiancé is a little bit out of it, so he doesn't take any notice. But as the man walks around the cars and down the road around the grass, my pup is tracking him with her eyes and keeping the separation between the man and me. Eventually, the man stops and pulls out his phone, pointing it up to the sky to take a photo. My fiancé, still being the goof that he is, stares up at the sky too, commenting about how beautiful it looks. But because my pup is staring at the guy, I'm staring at him. I just have a feeling that there is something wrong with him. My pup doesn't care about other humans. They could walk by at any time and she would not even give them a second glance. But with him it was different. When he finished up taking the photo of the sky, I watched as he turned his phone towards me and my dog to take a photo of us. Now I know I was scantily clad because it was hot, and all I was doing was taking my dog out to poop, nothing else. I had locked eyes with the man as he turned his phone, and I could tell that it freaked him out a bit, seeing that I had caught him trying to snap a photo. He hurried away after getting caught, my pup and I watching as he walked down the road. Now I haven't seen him since that incident. I'm not sure if he lives in the complex or if he was just walking through, but I'm happy my dog was looking out for me. She got plenty of treats when we got back inside for that. This happened last night about midnight. I was in my bed when I heard frantic knocking. I walked out of my bedroom while the knocking continued again and heard a woman saying, "Please help me," along with crying, but it was faint. I looked out the peephole to see nobody there and no other doors were being knocked on. Just mine, which is odd by itself, but I'm also on the 3rd floor. Why would somebody walk all the way up to my apartment if in distress? I think it was a recording because if somebody really needed help, they would be banging on everybody's door. I called the police immediately and the dispatcher told me not to open the door and if I had a weapon. I heard of this tactic before, although it is slightly different. Being a recording of a baby crying. It's just insane when thinking about the statistics of stranger abductions usually resulting in murder. Also, it's so sick to try and prey on people's empathy. Police drove by and I saw them using their spotlight to look through the complex, but as of now, I have no idea if anybody was found or by chance if someone was hurt, or if they even found her. I've barely slept with all the possibilities of how this person found me, where they saw me, when they followed me, or if they live in this complex. I am 4'10", live alone and don't know many people in the area. No family close by either. Have they been watching me and know all of this? I mean, it's just making me go insane. So, stay vigilant and don't fall for these kinds of tactics, and know that not everything you read on the internet is false. I heard about this a year ago and wonder if I hadn't already been aware of this, would I have opened the door? Where would I be right now? Would I even be alive? Update. I have talked with the management to let them know what is going on. As of right now, nobody else has reported to them of anything similar happening. I am going to contact the police again for an update. I was redirected to another police department. They weren't the ones who responded to the call. I know it takes time for reports to be filed, so I'm trying to be patient. I just want to know if this has happened to anybody else. I have ordered a Ring camera and I will be picking it up shortly. At least this way I could get video of them if they come back, and it will help me sleep better. As far as it being a prank, I guess absolutely it could be. But I would be more inclined to believe it if it happened to the other women in the apartment. Maybe it has, but they haven't said anything. On one side of the coin, it's a very cruel prank that I shouldn't worry about. On the other, somebody has been watching me and had something sinister in mind. Horrifying to think that somebody would pull an elaborate prank like this or real-world things that happen that we never think could happen to us. With guns and self-defense classes, I'll be getting both of these. But they both take time and a lot of money. I don't want to just get a cheap gun with no training, that won't help much. It will be something I will invest my time and money into, but for the short-term security, I can really only get a Ring camera and stay updated with the police. So, thank you to everyone for your helpful tips. Like the neighborhood apps and gun safety. I appreciate so much during this very scary time for me. Another update, by the way. I finally have my Ring camera installed and working. I feel much safer knowing if they come back, I can at least have a recording of them. I know I need to talk to my neighbors, but right now I'm exhausted from no sleep and still spooked, so I'll do that tomorrow. Also, hopefully the police report will be filed tomorrow. and I can talk to the deputy about this to see if there's any updates. It was mid-July, summertime in the Michigan countryside. I was a 17-year-old guy who at the time frequently visited my grandfather. 4 years earlier, my grandma had died from some sort of cancer. He was alone quite a bit, so you expect that to make me and my family nervous. For a 70-year-old man to be home alone all by himself. I drove over there one day and I saw him sitting on the porch. When I got out of my truck, we greeted each other and headed inside. He's your average grandpa, watches the news, complains about how the country has gone to shit, and tells stories from when he was younger. I really enjoyed being around him though. He's a real nice person. He bought the house about 10 years ago and had my dad help him fix it up. When my dad had died, it was mostly me there to help. You can say we grew closer. I stayed the night quite a few times, just to make sure everything was okay. I was about to head back when my grandpa slipped and fell in the kitchen, and of course I immediately helped him up. I helped him off to bed and I decided to stay. I slept in the guest bedroom, right by the basement stairs. I was about to go to sleep when I swore I heard a loud creak. Sometimes I let paranoia get the better of me, but I wasn't this time. I was fairly certain that it was the house settling. I tried to put it aside when I heard something in the kitchen. That was it. The paranoia set in, and I slowly got out of bed. It continued. It sounded like somebody was rummaging through a drawer or desk. They certainly weren't being quiet about it. I opened my door as slowly and cautiously as I could. In the hallway, there was a pantry, and on top of the shelf was a fully loaded .357. I knew because he showed it to me a few days prior. I inched out of my room, with adrenaline spiking. As I opened the pantry door, I had a simultaneous sense of caution and urgency. I reached up and felt the familiar feel of cold metal. I slowly pulled it down and pulled the hammer back. On the outside, I didn't look too scared, but on the inside, I was terrified. The same noises echoed throughout the house. Then I did the stupidest thing I've probably ever done. Who the hell's out there? I'm armed and I will shoot. Silence. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't do anything. Not until I heard the sliding glass door slam open. I ran out into the kitchen and out into the porch. I could barely make out the shape of a person sprinting towards the road. He turned the corner and went out of sight. I looked around and noticed down the steps that the cellar door was wide open. I had the gun as I inched down the steps, looking down the road and making sure the person was gone. I inspected the door. Every second I looked over my shoulder. The lock had not been fiddled with. Either they had a key or they picked the lock. Either way, I already had enough. I shut the door, locked it, and went inside. I inspected the kitchen. Papers were strewn about. Food was gone. The fridge was wide open. I have no idea what they were looking for. I walked down the hall and quietly opened my grandpa's door. His respirator hissed as he slept. Everything in here looked to be in order. I called the police and woke him up. He was just as confused as I was. When the police got there, I told them everything, and the next day they found the man. Apparently, he was the previous owner's grandson who was kicked out before the previous owner moved. He was a heavy drug addict and must have thought he still lived there. He had all the locks changed, and I stayed with my grandpa more frequently. I have no idea what would have happened if I hadn't been there that night. I'm also certain that this was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. Nothing has happened since, and I'm going to San Diego to boot camp to become a Marine. I just hope for nothing when I'm gone. Gather around, folks, as I recall to you the details of the most WTF moment of my life. I'm typing this up on my phone, so I apologize in advance if I make any grammatical errors or the format isn't quite perfect. Now on with the show we go. This takes place sometime around the summer of September 2010. I, 25 female, was about 14 or 15 years old at the time. My family wasn't super financially well off, but my dad managed to pull together a family camping trip to Savannah, Georgia. Though Savannah wasn't home to the most beautiful of beaches, it was a beach that held a lot of sentimental value. I remember camping on Tybee Island many times as a kid. I was over the moon excited to be going back for the first time since I was a much smaller kid, and this time I was getting to bring my best friend. The weekend had never looked more enticing. The trip started off normal. We got to the campsite and my dad started to set up his tent. My oldest brother and his girlfriend were just hanging out. My older brother busy exploring the site, and my friends and I were hanging out on the picnic table, near the rather small tent. After everything was set up, we were all just hanging out, relaxing as it was already getting late by this time. Might be worth mentioning that I come from a 420 friendly household, so please refrain from judgment. Anyways, we were just chilling and smoking a little joint when our camp neighbor pops out from his tent. He must have smelled our ganja, so he came over and introduced himself. We'll call him Dan. He's in his mid-50s, around 6 foot, give or take an inch or two. About ear length, wavy, Gracie looking gray hair. Kinda made my skin crawl a little bit, but So Dan comes up and introduces himself and asks to smoke with us. My friends and I didn't partake in the group chat as we just didn't really give a crap, like most teen girls wouldn't, so we just conversed amongst ourselves close by so we could still smoke, but far enough away that we wouldn't have to engage in conversation with Dan. I wasn't too worried as I had my 2 older brothers and my dad there to protect us, and the one thing about the middle oldest brother is that he was a wild little shit who would probably kill the guy if he tried anything funny. But regardless, I was still aware of how much Buddy gave me the heebie-jeebies. However, he didn't try anything, so that was cool. Just played guitar with my dad and oldest brother until we all decided to crash. That night, my friends and I decided to sleep on the picnic table. The tent with my dad felt too small and we felt too cool to share one with him. One of my brothers was already sleeping in the car, and my eldest brother took off with his girlfriend to go sleep on the beach. So we decided, screw it, let's sleep on the table. Bad idea. We spent the whole night getting eaten by mosquitoes and feeling like we were being watched. It was terrible. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. We slept in the car the rest of the trip. The next morning, Dan popped up on us again as we were smoking a morning bowl while readying ourselves to go get breakfast. My dad, being the total gent that he is, invites Dan to come along. At this point, he seemed normal enough. Stinky, but nice enough. Never said anything weird to me or my friend, but I could just feel something off about him. But again, I felt safe with my brothers and my dad. I felt like just the appearance of my dad would be enough to make him steer clear of us. My dad's not too tall, but he is fit, covered in tattoos with long hair and several facial piercings. Total metalhead, and despite his big heart, he had the male equivalent of a resting bitch face. So breakfast started off normal. We're all baked and giggling, enjoying our scrumptious-ass breakfast, when all of a sudden Dan pipes up. He starts talking about the show Hannah Montana. We all exchanged glances like, is this grown-ass man really raving about a teen television series? So we all sit back and listen. Dan goes on about how beautiful Miley Cyrus is, and how he hates the character Oliver and how cool the character Lily was. We're all looking like, what the heck? When the real dinger gets thrown out there, this guy, this poor delusional man starts telling us that he's in a relationship with Miley. That when she has a love interest in the show, it's really just a subliminal message that she's sending to him. That her lyrics and her music are for him. We obviously didn't question it because we're all pretty clear that this guy's off his rocker, so what would be the point? We all just kind of nod our heads and hurry up on finishing our breakfast. Nobody even had to say what we were all thinking, so we just tried to kind of shrug him off if he ever approached us again. We all kind of caught on to how weird he was, and everybody just kind of steered clear of him from then on. Later that day, after we digested our food a bit and relaxed, we smoke again. All that good stuff. We all decided to hit the beach. The part we went to was near a pier and a bunch of shops, so my friends and I decided to wander around and get a little time away from all of the testosterone. We roam the shops a little bit and pick out some cute necklaces and the works, then decide to head over onto the pier. Now the entrance of the pier has this little gazebo type stuff with tables and drink machines. So my friends and I decided we were going to plant our little tired asses there and cool off for a bit. We're chilling there, talking about normal teen crap when I spot Dan sitting just a couple tables behind ours. My friend was sitting with her back towards Dan's direction, so I quietly let her know that Dan was there watching us and we should skedaddle. So we get up and start heading towards the beach. We get off the pier and make it to the beach and think we're in the clear. We hadn't seen him get up after us, but of course we were wrong. Not long after entering the beach part of the area, we peep that he's walking behind us. Not too close, but close enough that it's blatantly obvious that he is indeed following us. So we silently came up with a plan in case he got a hold of us. We agreed that we would jump him if he tried anything. We were two small teen girls, but my friend was a crazy little Gemini who had also been attending kickboxing classes regularly for years. This girl could roundhouse kick the crap out of him, and he 100% wouldn't expect it. So she made me feel brave and unafraid. The best kind of friend to have in a situation like this. However, as unafraid as I may have been, I still knew our best shot would be finding either one of my brothers or my dad. Fortunately for us, we saw my brother and his girlfriend relaxing on the beach, not too far ahead. So we hurried up to them, and Dan veered off somewhere else. Once we were sure he was gone, we started telling my brother about Dan following us. He was clearly bothered, but just told us to stay near and keep an eye out. Let him know if he says anything weird, and that was that. No idea if he wanted to snatch us up or simply just follow us around. I don't recall seeing Dan again that night or on our last day there. His gear was gone by morning, and we all breathed a sigh of relief because, let's be real, however sad it may be that he was so very clearly mentally ill, Dan was weird, and we were all pretty stoked to spend our last day without him. Our last day was great. We all had a blast, and Dan never came back. So we packed up and waved goodbye to Savannah as we all laughed and discussed all the crazy stuff Dan had said on that trip. But we could all agree that this seemingly super nice and normal middle-aged man had given us a trip to remember. But wait, there's more. So after about a week or so of being home, my dad was watching the news when guess who pops up on the screen? You guessed it. Headlined, Miley Cyrus stalker arrested in Savannah, Georgia after trying to gain access to studio. Or something crazy along those lines, but it was 100% him, no mistaking. As they said his name and listed our vacation weekend in Savannah as the time and place of his arrest. And of course the picture solidified any prior doubts. It was him. So during that weekend when he wasn't with us, he was actively stalking Miley Cyrus and was arrested for trying to get into the studio or wherever that she was filming at. And that's why he wasn't there that last day. So we decided, screw it, let's Google this guy. Turns out that wasn't the first time he had been arrested for stalking her. Dan had been arrested in a couple of different states as he had been following her around the country. He genuinely believed they were in love. We found a video of him on YouTube being interviewed by some news dude. Different incident than the Savannah arrest. Dan was talking about how he was there to see Miley and that he was going to ask her to marry him. He looked so jittery and excited, like somebody who was truly excited to propose to the love of their life would be. I think that's part of what weirded me out the most. He really and truly believed it with all of his heart. And that, my friends, is terrifying to say the least. So there you have it, internet dwellers. The story of my camping trip with the official Miley Cyrus stalker. I changed his name as I'm not certain of the rules as far as naming criminals go, but a simple Google search should suffice for anyone who's truly curious. As a last thought, I'll leave you with this. I kept wondering why Dan was drawn to my friend and me, and recently I relayed this story to a friend. Something dawned on me. Hannah Montana, or Miley, on the show was a brunette, and her best friend Lily was a blonde. I was a brunette, and my friend was a blonde. So what if he saw us and had some weird thought of us being like them or something? I don't know, could be a stretch, but my mind was blown when I thought about it. Anyways, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed my story. It's one I always enjoy telling because it's just so, what the heck, you know? LOL. My friend and I are still super close, and it's something that gets brought up at least once or twice a year, either with her or with my family. A memory to last a lifetime for all involved for sure. So at least we have that. I live in an apartment complex in a quiet neighborhood with my girlfriend and our dogs. A neighbor will get the occasional domestic disturbance call for an argument or loud party, but never anything particularly crazy. About a year ago, I was taking my lab outside early in the morning when we were approached by a dirty-looking guy who got out of a rundown pickup truck with no license plates. My dog is 12 and has always been the sweetest toward other humans, but for some reason she went absolutely nuts at the mere sight of this guy. Something definitely felt off, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. At about the same time, my dog showed her hackles. He waved to me and asked if I knew what apartment the girl who drives the white Equinox lives in because he gave her a ride home last night. Needless to say, there were some red flags here. Number 1, why are you pointing to her car that's in the parking lot if you took her home? Number 2, even if I knew you, I'm not telling you. If you took her home and she wouldn't even let you in or tell you where she lived, that tells me all I need to know." I told him I don't know and I'm sorry I can't help him. My dog still hadn't stopped barking. Apparently that answer wasn't good enough, as he followed me into my building and said, "Come on, buddy, I just need to ask her something." I reiterated that I don't know her and I couldn't help him. Still not good enough. He began following me up the stairs, repeating himself about the girl who drove the Equinox. At this point, it's taking everything I have to keep my dog from ripping his face off. I finally managed to pick her up and walk up the stairs. As I got on my floor and was opening the door to my apartment, he came through the door that separates us from the stairs and began asking in a more aggressive tone. Mind you, I'm taller than this guy, covered in tattoos, worked out fairly regularly at the time, and had a large dog who was snarling at him. I'm far from a badass or anything, but I'm not usually the type of person somebody targets to harass. Up until this point, I was speaking to him very politely. There was clearly something off about him, and I just wanted him to go away, but screwing with somebody at their home is crossing the line. He kept approaching me as I was opening the door, so I finally told him, "Dude, if you come through my door, I'm going to blow your brains out." And this wasn't a bluff. I keep a handgun by the door due to some run-ins in my past. That, along with my tone of voice, was apparently enough for him to get the message, as I watched him run out of the door and back to his vehicle from my window. I notified the apartment manager and they said they would contact the police and figure out who drove a white Equinox in my building so they could alert her as well. I have no idea what he intended to do had he gotten in my apartment, or what his intentions were with the girl he was looking for. I'm just glad my dog has a great sense of character. This happened a couple of years ago, but I'm going to tell the experience in present tense as I feel that will make it easier to follow and to write in general. In case you're wondering what we look like, I'm at the time a 17-year-old 100-pound red-headed chick who's the furthest thing from intimidating that you'll ever see. My boyfriend Ian is a 22 super skinny white dude with shaggy hair and a bunch of tattoos. He's the second least intimidating person you'll ever see. Ian and I have a picnic every Thursday evening. The location usually varies, but we usually end up at our favorite spot, which we refer to as the best spot. Now, the reason it's called this is because we live in the dirtiest dregs of the most ghetto part of town, but amidst the abandoned buildings and blankets of graffiti lies a historical house surrounded by towering weeping willows and shrouded with vines. Across from the mansion is a beautifully secluded field with gardens and the greenest grass you've ever seen. It even has solar garden lights so that the whole place is dimly lit at night. Because of the giant trees and the fact that most of the street is abandoned, there's never really anyone there. It quickly became our favorite place to go. So we are having our picnic and we're smoking a blunt in a tree when we notice a passerby. Rare. It piques our curiosity, but we don't think much about it and go back to minding our own business and getting high and pretending like nothing bad could ever happen to us because, we're teenagers. This stranger appears to be in his late 20s, kind of short but really burly. He's wearing a gray hoodie and some baggy pants. He has a face tattoo. I don't know how relevant that is, but maybe it will help you paint a picture of him in your head. We see him a few more times as he nervously paces up and down the street, but once again we're in the ghetto. Our neighbors sell meth. A homeless guy lived with us for 6 months. We just assumed he's a tweaker or a drug dealer, or maybe just a lost soul, and go about our picnic without giving it a second thought. The sun begins to set and we decide to head home before it gets dark. Our house is about 2 blocks away and conveniently difficult to find. There's this apartment complex, and hidden behind that apartment complex is another tiny quadplex where we live. So we are making our way up the quickly darkening street when Ian turns to me and whispers, "Pretty sure that guy's following us." I turn around to see the same guy who's been lurking a good distance behind us, maybe 4 or 5 intersections back. I, being the oblivious person I am, chalk it up to the weed just making Ian paranoid and kind of brush off his accusation and continue on with whatever dumb thing I'm babbling on about. A few seconds go by and he interrupts me again, this time with a deeper tone in his voice. "No, I'm telling you, he's following us." This startles me. For one, Ian isn't the type to ever be afraid of anything, and for two, I've never heard this tone of voice from him before. Well, how do you know he's not just walking in the same direction as us? So Ian tells me, turn around and look at him, notice where he is, then turn back around and act as though nothing's wrong. I turned to look at him. He's a bit closer now, but nothing too out of the ordinary, I guess. A couple seconds go by, maybe like 10, and when Ian says, "Okay, now look again." This time I turn back to the man, and he is significantly closer. Every time we turn around, he starts running towards us, but when we turn back to look at him, he pretends to be casually walking again. At this point, he's only about 20 feet behind us, and we're stuck in that fight or flight moment where we only have a few seconds to determine the next step. We cross the street as a final requisite. The man crosses too. Me. So, what do? Ian says, "Run." And then he bolts away, leaving me in the dust. Now let me tell you something about Ian. He was a track star in high school. In the 3 seconds it takes me to comprehend what was happening, he's already halfway up the street and around the corner. It's like that scene from every zombie movie where some jerk trips his friend and leaves him to be eaten alive while he escapes through a conveniently placed door. The thing about me is I'm a terrible runner. It's one of my biggest weaknesses, actually. I take off running and at some point glance back just to see if the guy is chasing me, which he is, and he's right on my tail. The worst part about all of this is that I don't have a wallet or anything of value, so even if his intention is just to rob me, there is no way this is going to end well. There's no one around. Absolutely nobody. I make it around the corner towards the apartment complex and am luckily much more familiar with the area than this guy is. I plummet into the apartment gates and zigzag through some of the tiny buildings, run through a clearing and past the first quadruplex, which is identical to mine, circle around and then haul ass to my front door. I've been running so fast that by now I have no idea if this guy is still behind me or how close behind me. In a moment of sheer panic, I fumble for the keys and somehow manage to get them in the doorknob, even though my hands are shaking like Elvis Presley. I fling the door open and slam it behind me and lock it as fast as I can. Then I wait in terror. Did I lose him? Did he see where I went? Is he going to come back later? What does he want? Is he going to bust out one of the many windows and murder me? I simply don't know. I don't have the slightest idea what this guy's intentions are, but there are windows all around, and even the door is basically one big window. Luckily, all the blinds are down, but you can still see shadows, and there's a broken blind on the door where anyone can peek in or out. I sit on the ground beneath the door in hopes that I've lost the guy, in hopes that he didn't see where I went. A few moments pass, but it feels like an eternity. Ian is nowhere to be found. I don't have any weapons, and I'm paralyzed with fear that he will see me through the blinds if I stand up or try to make it to my phone. Then it happens, the shadowy figure peering through the broken blind. I can only see his half-muffled silhouette, but I know he's looking inside. I'm ducked down, hopefully out of sight at the bottom of the door, and completely frozen. He stands there for at least a minute and eventually leaves. To this day, I don't know if he saw me enter the house or if I got lucky enough with the whole zigzag routine to make it inside just in time for him to not be sure which door I went into. I don't know what he wanted or why he was chasing us. I also don't know why he didn't just attack us in the field when there was nobody around and we were in such a secluded location. Anyway, the moral of the story is, screw Ian. This happened like 4 or 5 years ago when I was 17 years old. I had a girlfriend. I'm also a girl, and I was at her house for the day. At this time, I didn't have a good relationship with my mom, so I would sleep for weeks at my best friend's house. So I realized it's like 1 a.m. and I decided to call an Uber. As I live in a kind of small city, so buses stopped passing by at 10 p.m. approximately. I called the Uber and asked it to wait at the end of the block so it wouldn't have to take an unnecessary turn. When it got there, my girlfriend went with me so we could say goodbye. We hugged and kissed, but that kind of kiss that lasts like 2 seconds. I waved to her as I turned to sit on the passenger seat of the car and say hello to the driver. He replied to my greeting and started driving. He looked okay at first, but I was really wrong. He was in his mid-40s, his head was shaved, and he had a large tattoo on his arm. He asked me if I was a student, and I replied yes. Then he asked what I was studying at college, and I told him that I was actually in my last year of high school. He said that I looked a lot older, and I just awkwardly laughed. This is when things started to go downhill. The conversation went something like this. Was that your girlfriend? The girl you kissed? Yeah. How long have you been together? 1.5 years. Wow. That's a really long time, so are you a lesbian? Why? Don't be ashamed. I'm not homophobic or something. I actually really like lesbians, he said. Oh. So, are you? And how do you do it if none of you has a dick? I really don't want to talk about that, I said. Why? Sex is normal. I want to know how you do it. Me. Have you ever been with a man? He said. Sorry, but I don't think it's appropriate to talk about this. Then he said he wanted to experiment a bit and have a threesome with 2 girls. Do you like men? He said. Not really, I said. It's okay. We don't have to literally have sex. He said he could just stand there and look as he touched himself. Me. We are not interested in that kind of stuff. Then he asked me how I know I don't like men if I've never been with one. Have you ever wondered what it's like? He asked. Friendly reminder that I was 17 at the time. My girlfriend was 16, and this creep was damn near 40 or older. At this point, I'm freaking out. This guy was taking another route to take longer to arrive at my friend's house, and I remember thinking, well, these are the last moments of my life. This guy is taking me somewhere else. Maybe it sounds a bit extreme, but where I live is not that uncommon for this kind of stuff to happen. I'm an atheist, but seemingly a miracle happened and my friend called me. I put him on speaker and he asked me how much more I'm going to take because he was worried. So I replied that the Uber driver is taking another route, but I'll be there soon and ask him to wait for me at the front door. The creep panicked and took me to my friend's place. I opened the door and ran as fast as I could to hug my friend. At that moment, I walked in the house. I just fell to the ground and cried my soul out. I'm a guy and this happened to me in 2012 when I was 25. I was pretty oblivious to a lot of things in life and always had the tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt, although much less so now. I was having trouble finding direction after university, jumping from job to job, getting more and more discontent with how my life was going. I came across a post on a popular social media site that was advertising that they were looking for young people to do seasonal work in the US. I thought I had nothing to lose. The money to be made sounded promising, and it would be an opportunity to have an adventure. I contacted them, got the process going, but still was unsure of really going. My current boss was a real self-centered prick. One morning soon after, we had a particularly bad falling out, which resulted in me calling him a lot of 4-letter expletives and walking off the job while literally tearing my uniform shirt off and throwing it on the floor. That was the sign I needed to jump at the opportunity to go on the trip. I got a job offer from a farmer in rural central/northern Idaho within the week, and about 3 weeks later, I was on the plane to Salt Lake City and then onto a 7+ hour bus trip to the farm. After a few hiccups, a delayed flight, and a bit of stress, I got there. The 8 months went by flawlessly and I had an amazing time. Great employer, making a lot of friends, and seeing so many awesome sights. This event started folding out about 2 weeks before I was due to return to my home country, in late November. Temperatures were below freezing already most days, and snow was sticking. I got home on a Friday evening about midnight after watching movies at a friend's place. I was a pretty serious night owl at that age and could function on 3 or 4 hours of sleep for months on end without problems. I called my parents around that time because of the time difference. It was around midday back home. Talked for about an hour or so, and when I hung up, I heard a vehicle drive up our shared driveway. The layout of the apartment block was as follows. 2 blocks of 4 units each. 2 on the ground floor and 2 on the first floor. 8 total. We had a shared driveway with all units facing the driveway and 1 parking space for each unit next to each other, right in front of the bottom unit's front doors. I lived in number 4, which was the right-hand side of the top unit in the first block. The creep this story is about lived in 6, which was the bottom right-hand unit in the second block. His name is Corey. The way my unit was laid out, I would have full view of the whole driveway and all of the car parkings all the way into the street. Unfortunately, there was very little light in the parking area as the street lights did not reach down the driveway. Now back to the story. I peeked out of my front window and saw it was the guy from number 6 coming back, as I recognized his truck in him as well from his stocky build, beard, and shaved head. I could hear he was mad and probably drunk because he was bellowing some nonsense and shouting something towards his girlfriend, who got out of the passenger side. He started kicking and punching some of the vehicles in the parking area, proceeding to knock the window out of an F-150, breaking down the railing from the stairs, leading to the second floor units. He went on for about 15 minutes with his vandalism and violent outbursts before his girlfriend herded him inside and it got quiet. Nothing else happened, so I got in bed because I had work that Saturday morning. When I got home about 5 p.m., there was a police cruiser in the driveway. I went up to my unit, and a while later there was a knock on my door. I opened up, and it was the officers. They inquired if I had seen something the previous night about the property damage outside. My normal consensus would be to stay out of anything that does not affect me personally, but I did not want to lie to the police in a foreign country and risk getting in trouble. So I gave a vague and short description of what I had witnessed, making sure to not directly point to the guy number 6, just saying a guy with a shaved head. They thanked me and went on their way. That Tuesday morning, I got a loud knocking on my door again. As I peeked out the front window, I saw the guy from number 6, Corey, pacing on my porch, shouting to open up as he knows I'm inside. I get cold, immediately thinking, "Aw man, now I'm gonna get beaten up." About 5 minutes later, my employer pulls up and the guy storms off. I go to work with my ass shitting bricks the whole day. I considered contacting the police officer that took my statement, but decided against it as I do not want to cause more trouble. I get home pretty late, and a little while later, I see Corey's girlfriend walk over and come knock on my door. I open up and she asks if she can have a chat. I say sure and step outside. She explains to me that he is on probation and any incidents will cause him to go back to jail. I said to her, then he should not have acted out and vandalized people's property. After a bit of back and forth, I gave her the copy of the statement I had, showing I did not imply him directly, only giving a general description saying it was dark and I could not see much. That put her a bit at ease. I told her I will retract the statement saying I was sleepy and unsure of what I saw if he stays away from me. She said she will talk to him. A couple of hours later, I get a knock on my door and it's the girlfriend. Corey stands at the bottom of the stairs saying he wants to apologize. I go outside seeing my neighbor on his porch. I feel pretty apprehensive as it's the first time I lay eyes on the guy. He is pretty big, about 6 foot, 250-pound bodybuilder type with swastika tattoos on the visible parts of his arms. I shake his hand and we have a lighthearted conversation on my porch, and he apologizes, offers me his cell number and takes mine, saying if I ever want to hang out, I should text him. I thank him and they walk off. I make a decision to never contact him as I don't like associating with extremists. On Friday, I only work half a day, and as I got back to my apartment, just as Corey and his girlfriend drive in. We greet and they invite me to go out with them for dinner. I decline, but they insist. I eventually agree. They say we can all drive together. We meet up at 3 and it's only him. He says his girlfriend doesn't feel well. I get in his truck and we drive down to a local Mexican restaurant. Initially, we have a good conversation, but it starts to die down. We finish eating, pay and walk out. I wanted to walk the almost mile home, but he insisted I get in the truck with him as we are both going the same way. I feel uneasy but get in. We drive out of the parking, but he turns the opposite way of going home. I ask him where we are going. He says he wants to show me something, and he says where they always went snowboarding when they were in school. All in this monotone voice without making eye contact. At that moment, I went from being uneasy to being scared. I'm not a small guy or anything at 6'2" and about 220 pounds, but I physically have no chance against him. We drive out of town and towards the mountains. He turns off the asphalt onto a gravel road leading up into the mountains. I get more freaked out. After about 30 to 40 minutes of driving, he stops in the middle of the road. It's starting to get dark out and I have not had cell service for the past 20 minutes. He gets out and takes out a hunting rifle from behind his seat. He talks for the first time since we left the diner, except for answering my question about where we are going. He says, in that same monotone voice without making eye contact, "Now we go hunting." I'm shitting bricks at that point, saying I'll wait for him in the truck. He looks at me and for the first time I see his eyes. Dark, dilated, and I can see the hate in them. He barks, "Get out." I get out slowly, my phone in hands, looking for nearby trees that I can run into or anything I can use for cover, as I am sure that I am the one that is going to be hunted. As I start walking around the truck, my phone rings. It rips me out of my daze. I was like, how the heck do I have cell reception here? I look at the screen and see it's one of my friends calling. I answer and her voice is the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. I immediately tell her where I am and with who. She asks me if everything is okay. I tell her if she does not hear from me again in 30 minutes to call the police. The call starts breaking up. I repeat that if she doesn't hear from me in 30, to call the police and tell them what I just told her. The call cuts out and I look at Corey. His eyes are shooting daggers at me, red in the face, and he looks like he is about to burst an artery in his head. So mad. I tell him to take me home, turn around, and get back in his truck. He puts the rifle away, gets in, and drives like a madman back the way we came. The whole ride back, he does not say a word or make any eye contact. We get back to the apartment complex where we live, and he stops in the street, but does not turn into the driveway. I jump out before the truck even comes to a complete stop. I see my friend's car parked in my spot. I did not have a car, and she came running towards me as soon as she saw me. We go into my apartment, and I explain the events to her. She goes white, and when I told her who the guy is, she tells me to pack my bags, and I'm staying with her and her family. I pack my stuff, and we leave. We get to her house, and her dad asks if I'm okay, as she had filled them in after the phone call. I explain it again, and her dad asks me who the guy was. I said his name and gave a description. Her dad got a somber look on his face. He explained that I was very lucky and we should contact the police immediately and give a statement. Also, because he was on probation, or parole, unsure which one, it was illegal for him to possess a firearm. Called the officer that took my initial statement, and he came by the house. He was friends with my friend's dad, and I gave a statement. I flew back to my home country a week later. I stayed with my friend and her family for that week as work was just about done, and they were having Thanksgiving, etc. The Sunday after the event, her dad and I were making a roast in the barbecue in the garage, and he filled me in a little bit. He went to school with Corey. Since school, Corey has been a bad seed, dealing drugs, getting in fights, and just being a generally unproductive waste of a human being and a burden on society, really. His first stint in jail was just after 18 when he got caught with more than a pound of weed in his possession. He got 3 years for it as it was his first offense. The second stint was shortly after he got out. A nature conservation officer caught him hunting illegally, and when he confronted him, Corey flipped out and beat the officer half to death. That got him 10 years. His stay got extended. How long, I'm not sure, because he shanked a couple of inmates and jumped and assaulted a prison guard. He also told me that the police picked up Corey on Friday night and found him with a loaded rifle in his truck. He was promptly arrested as it was a violation of his probation. Our interaction took place a few months after he got out the second time. Her father said there were rumors of him shooting a rival dealer in a city close by, but nothing could be proven. He also was a proud member of the white supremacists. I saw his girlfriend the night before I flew back at the grocery store, and the look she gave me is one of pure hate and anger. I still wonder if she was in on the plan or knew what he was planning to do. This is pretty much where the story ends. I lost contact with my friends and have not been back there since. Also don't plan to, as I have had enough of redneck neo-Nazis. So, Corey, maybe you just wanted to take me out on a hunting trip and I overreacted, but with your history of violence, I highly doubt that. You had sinister, premeditated plans to take me out into the forest and hunt me like prey. And for that, I hope you rot in prison. Society is a better place without you roaming around freely. My best friends and I are both females and are 18 years old, but quite short and young looking. I'll call her Rose. We are walking down a very quiet street in Sydney, a little bit lost. I'm usually very alert when in public places, being a young woman. We were talking about albums and music, and a man jogged past us. He was looking at us, and I made eye contact with him the whole time before he stopped about 10 meters up. He looked to be in his late 30s. I already got a bad feeling about things, and I signaled that to Rose. He stopped us and asked us if we had any music suggestions. Awkwardly, we said no, and he said, "But you were just talking about albums." Keep in mind, he had earphones in as he jogged past us and was only near us for a few seconds. Does this mean he was following us without us realizing? We tried to turn the conversation down every single time we spoke, but he began to follow us. Rose is shorter and younger than me, and it shows. His questions were more directed at her, and I immediately started to answer him before she could. He got mad at me and began to try and talk some more to Rose. He would comment on the clothes she was wearing, and I would do whatever I could to intervene. Rose made me aware of the swastika tattoo on his arm. He continued following us wherever we would go, despite us being in a very public area of the city now. It got to the stage where I grabbed Rose's hand and walked onto a busy road, pulling her across, narrowly avoiding cars. He still followed. We then started walking down some hill with no idea where we were. He stopped and asked why we were going that way, and we said there was a place we wanted to visit. With that, he turned around and jogged away. We still don't know what his intentions were. We always felt safe at the city during the day, but now things feel different. I had a flashback with all the details while talking to my girlfriend on the phone and telling each other our memories. After hours of reading people's memories on Reddit, I have something to share and I can't wait to see your reactions. This happened at the beginning of 2023. I, male 22 at the time, was working as a terminal attendant at one of the biggest airports in Europe. My job description was mostly to give directions to arriving and departing passengers in this airport as big as a city, to solve their problems and to solve visa and passport related problems as well. For some reasons I can't tell you exactly which airport it is, but you can probably guess from the details I will give. Since the airport is really huge and is in a very key location, it is one of the transfer points for passengers coming and going from Asia, Africa, Europe, and America. So it was in the nature of my job to encounter very strange types of people and events. I was working 12-hour shifts, some days at night and some days during the day, and the area I was working in was determined by daily assignments. This incident happened during my 12-hour night shift on the transfer floor of the airport, the common point where international passengers wait for passport control before picking up their luggage and where the passengers of all incoming international flights flow. Actually, when we work, we are supposed to wait at a fixed point when passengers don't specifically call for us. But it was 3 o'clock at night, and since flights and passenger traffic slow down at this time of night, I decided to patrol around a bit. I left my station and went to the gate of the only arrival flight at that time of night. I decided to wait there in case passengers needed help when they opened the gate. After a while, the plane pulled up to the gate and the gate opened, and a lot of normal looking people walked out of the gate and into the transfer center. Except that woman, that strange looking woman who made me feel cursed by the cold January air. She was a brunette in her late 20s, covered in dirt and torn clothes. Her hair was missing in some places, and the hair that was there was rather unkempt, and I think a bit burnt. When she saw me in my uniform with unusually large pupils, she walked up to me, looking scared and confused. "Excuse me, do you work here? I need help." "Damn it, of course you need help." I wanted to take her arm because she was having trouble walking, but the smell emanating from her, don't judge. It wasn't a normal sweat smell, but it smelled like she was already dead, made my nose hurt, and I immediately abandoned the idea. I sat her down on a seat reserved for passengers, and I stood opposite her and asked her in a calm voice how I could help her. I had a very bad experience. That's why I'm running away from there. I haven't eaten for days, and I think there was something in the water they gave me on the plane. Since I drank it, I don't feel well and my mind is fuzzy. I didn't find what she was saying convincing. I thought she was in some kind of mental breakdown because her gestures and annotations when she spoke were very strange as well. But I was also familiar with the aviation rules, and I knew that something like this should be reported immediately to the police. When I told her this, she didn't like that idea, and she stood up and shook me by the shoulders and shouted, "No police. Never the police." Dude, she started laughing, looking up at the ceiling like there was something up there. The woman was making strange gestures with her hand, but her cheerful demeanor was broken by a sudden burst of crying. "No police. They won't like it." "Hey, the police, that's their job. Who said anything about cops? I'm talking about the people who did this to me." As she said this, she lifted up the burnt hair that had fallen on her forehead, and I saw one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life. Look, I've seen a lot of strange tattoos because of the environment I studied and lived in, but this was different. Right in the center of her forehead was a tattoo that looked like the barcodes on products in the grocery store with some numbers underneath. At first, I thought it was a strange fashion sense for aesthetic purposes, but her strange behavior and some documentaries I had seen made me think that it was probably used by human traffickers to mark people, like slaves, so that they could be easily identified and caught when they escaped. When she realized that I couldn't help her the way she wanted, she at least wanted to use my phone, but I told her she was not allowed to use my phone due to the airport security rules and that she could use the payphones if she wanted to. Of course, she didn't have any money with her and I was not allowed to give her any money. Since she showed aggressive behavior towards me every time I insisted on talking to the police, I finally decided to do it secretly and brought her some food and some water before going to them myself. When I arrived at the police station on the transfer floor, The policemen were taking advantage of the calm of the night to rest. When I told them what happened to me and pointed to the woman, they told me that she was one of the refugees coming into our country. My country hosts so many illegal immigrants and refugees. It's normal for them to think like that, and that she was acting like that because she wanted us to let her enter illegally. They didn't take it very seriously at all, and unfortunately, I had to leave without any solution. When I went back to the woman, I realized that she had not touched the food and water I had brought her, and repeatedly refused to consume them with a fear in her eyes. I decided to have a conversation with the woman so as not to be too judgmental. When I asked her name, she gave me a very strange answer that I had never heard before. It was like a name from some ancient language, and even now I don't remember exactly what she said. When I asked her where she came from and where she was going, she said she didn't know. To get this information, I took her passport and her boarding pass from her hands. I don't remember exactly where she was coming from, but an Asian country, and her next destination was not written on the boarding pass, so her ticket was valid only until here. I decided to end our conversation, which was not very productive, and leave her alone to observe from a distance. I had to go back to my station for some paperwork and decided to take care of it in the meantime. Later that night around 6 a.m., my other colleague was due to arrive at the station to hand in my shift. I was going to exit through the door where they were going to enter the transfer center where we were, and before I left, I decided to stop by again on my way to see this strange female visitor. When I went up to her, she was holding a book in her hand. It was a book with old covers and yellowed paper, but I didn't understand what was written in it until she pointed at me and called me over. Even then I didn't understand it. It was a book written in an alphabet I didn't know, in a language I didn't know. And I don't want you to think I was making it up, but it was a book with strange figures of people and other drawings. The woman pointed to one of the drawings and said, "This is how they do this." "They do what like this?" I'm confused. Can you be more specific? When I said that, she shook her head from side to side, laughing. She had an expression as if I wouldn't understand even if she explained it. I told her that a friend of mine would be arriving soon in my place and that if she had any problems or needs, she could contact them as she wished. I gave her directions to the restroom, where she could get food, the police station, and the ticket office. After a few seconds of looking at my face, she thanked me in tears and took my hands in both of hers and looked me in the eyes. I didn't know exactly what happened to her, but at that moment my heart broke and I put my other hand over hers and nodded. It was time to leave when my friend, who was coming behind me to take my place, touched me and I introduced them to the woman and secretly informed her about the situation. My friend told me that they were going to take special care of her, said goodbye, and I finished my shift for the day. When I woke up the next day, I texted my friend and asked them how she was doing. They told me that after I introduced them to her, they left to take care of another passenger and that they never saw her for the rest of the day. They said that when they asked the passport police and ticket offices, they told them that they were busy enough as it was and that they didn't pay that much attention to people and brushed them off. I never saw this woman on my next shifts, and I never heard from her again. Still gives me goosebumps when I remember it. I would be interested in your comments on the incident. If there is anything I missed or you want to ask, let's meet in the comments. Thank you for reading or listening. I've never really sat down and written all of this out before, and I keep getting reminded about it. So I figured I could post it somewhere to kinda, vent, I guess. And since this subreddit is about encounters with creeps, I figured you guys might get some entertainment out of it too. So first of all, the woman I call Nana in this story isn't actually related to me, but for most of my life she and her husband were like grandparents to me. I grew up very poor and they lived in a nice house, so going to their house was like a super cool vacation to me. Well, then I was 12. Nana's husband, whom my sisters and I affectionately called Pappy, died from lung cancer. It was rough on me since his funeral was held on my 12th birthday, but it was obviously rougher on Nana. She changed after that and started acting like you'd expect someone to act if they were going through a midlife crisis. She bought a stripper pole, got a back tattoo, and things like that, even though she'd been pretty conservative before. And then she, out of nowhere, started dating and married another man, like super fast. We'll call him T. At first, T didn't seem too bad. He was kind of weird, but I just thought it was because he was the new guy, as it were. Now, T, you need to know, was probably in his late 50s to early 60s, and I was only 15 or 16 when I met him. The first red flag came after T offered to take me for a ride on his motorcycle. I thought riding on a motorcycle would be cool since I'd never done it before, and he was Nana's husband. What did I have to worry about? So we're on the motorcycle and he's driving me around. Everything's fine, and then he tells me I need to scoot closer and hold on tight or I'm going to fall off. Obviously I listened to him, and that was the first time he touched my leg. Just a pat on my shin. I didn't think anything of it. But then he did it again and again and again. At that point, I was getting a little bit uncomfortable, so I pulled away from him a little bit. He tells me I need to hold on, and when I hesitate, he no joke tells me, "I'm not trying to feel those big old titties on my back. I just don't want you to fall off." That should have been the moment where I told everyone he was a creep, including Nana, but I let it go like an idiot. Cut to a little while later, and T has continued to make me uncomfortable damn near every time I visit, but I still haven't told anyone anything. I wake up one morning and go to the kitchen to make some cereal. I'm wearing nothing but a long nightgown and panties, no bra or anything because I literally just woke up. Well, T comes into the kitchen and sees me standing at the counter. He walks up behind me, wraps both of his arms around my waist, and pulls me around him. I froze, but then he mumbled in my ear, "You're so sexy." Then he walked away. This was the breaking point. I told my parents and my then boyfriend, now husband, what happened. I refused to go back to Nana's the next time she asked me to go, and when I told her why, her only response was, "But he does that kind of stuff to everyone." Needless to say, I cut her out of my life for that. A few years down the line, I heard that T died, and Nana came groveling to me, trying to get me to meet with her. I went, but things between me and her have never been back to the way they were. I suspect they never will. I grew up in a small town in Alabama. A little bit after I graduated high school, when I was 18, I started dating this guy in his early 20s from a nearby city. He was very handsome, tall, muscular male that we'll call Sean for this story. He told me on our first date that he used to be part of a very well-known gang in the United States. Sean explained that he'd only been a part of this gang in his younger years because he'd grown up in a bad area and hadn't really had any other options. He also did have proof of being in said gang, including being aware of gang signs associated with said gang and having tattoos associated with that gang, which I did Google to see if the tattoos and gang signs were in fact associated with said gang, since I know there are some people who like to lie about being ex-gang members and the like for some reason to seem cool. But Sean didn't seem like the type to lie about that also. I gave Sean the benefit of the doubt because he didn't really give me any bad vibes. I remember he was always a gentleman to me and treated me very well. So of course I didn't really suspect anything about him. We dated for a few weeks before the night that I found out the truth about him. I was staying over at Sean's apartment one night and everything was seeming pretty normal. This was the first time I'd ever stayed the night at his apartment since I do tend to be a bit cautious. So regardless of his background, it wouldn't have mattered. I just don't really like staying over at people's homes until I get to know them a bit more. And I do have at least a 3-date rule. I'd been too busy before that to really stay over at his place. So that night when I was staying over, Sean's best friend was visiting for a bit. And that's when the red flags started to show up. It did seem weird to have a friend over when the girl you are seeing is staying over for the first time. And it was revealed to me that in private, Sean's friend was another ex-gang member from a well-known gang that is the enemy of the gang Sean had been a part of. Of course, I can accept people all have their backstories, but it was definitely just a weird thing to suddenly tell me out of the blue. Additionally, Sean had not even told me his friend would be at the apartment that day in the first place. An additional note, Sean's friend did not corroborate that he and Sean were both ex-gang members. Then after Sean's friend had left, we were hanging out in his room and this guy had a little arsenal in his room. I'm not exaggerating when I say he had enough weaponry to arm a small militia. This included things like grenades, bulletproof vests, an AK-47 or a gun similar to it, to name a few of the weapons he had in his room. Needless to say, that was the second red flag of the day. That night we were in bed together and I can't remember what led to him revealing to me what he said in our conversation. He confessed to me that he was in fact still a part of the gang he had told me he said he was out of now. So of course I was immediately giving him this look like, "I'm sorry, what?" Then he proceeded to go on to tell me that he actually was a hitman for the gang and, while he hadn't been active as a hitman as of late, he would still accept hits if they were given to him. The entire time he said this, he just looked me dead in the eyes with the most deadpan casual look, no feeling in his eyes, and spoke like he was talking about the weather. It was extremely creepy, and I knew right then that this guy was a straight up sociopath. I didn't doubt that he was lying. I've met people who try to get clout by lying about things like this, and he was definitely not one of those types. I did stay the rest of the night and then left the next morning and never talked to him again. I was definitely not going to keep on dating somebody like that. There's not really anything to the story after that. He never really tried to contact me after. I'm sure some people will probably wonder why I didn't just leave right after he told me he was a hitman. I didn't think it was a good idea to react strongly and immediately storm out of the apartment. I also didn't exactly feel like he was a danger to me personally, but he definitely had the vibe of someone who had killed people. The reason why I recognize that kind of vibe is another story. He was always very polite to me, but regardless, there was no way I was going to keep dating him, no matter how attractive he was. This just happened last night. I popped into the Kroger on my way home from work, a little late, like 9 or so at night, just trying to grab a few bagged salads and whatnot for dinner. As I was walking in, a possibly homeless dude was also shuffling in from the opposite direction. I didn't think much of it, but I noted it as I always do. Gotta always be aware and cautious as a smallish woman alone at night. This sub has only strengthened that for me. I'm a tattoo artist, so I don't exactly have the look of someone you want to mess with, but I'm also only 5'2", so always better safe than sorry. I'm shopping in produce and he shuffles by. Then I'm in the freezer and he shuffles by. Then I remember I needed more produce and go back, and there he is again. At this point I honestly just thought, poor guy, it's pretty cold tonight. I bet as a homeless person you have to stay on the move. Keep walking around and you could get away with several hours in here, I bet. I wasn't creeped out at all yet. I did note that he had no basket or cart and no products in his hands, but again I assumed he was just getting warm inside. So I finished shopping and see him a handful more times. I go to the self-checkout. I've barely started scanning things when he begins checking out at the register next to me. As I said, it was late and nobody was behind me waiting, so I was kind of taking my time scanning my always too many groceries, which is why it was weird he was still there a few minutes later. He still hadn't had a cart or basket to check out. I glanced out of the corner of my eye and saw him just standing there pushing buttons on the screen, reaching in his pockets like he was paying, but he wasn't ringing anything up. That set my alarm bells off, and I looked around to take note of anyone around, security or otherwise. And behind me, at the bagged rice, a man is standing in a yellow vest like the cart pushers, but it's a guy I've never seen before. I go to this store a lot and I see he's mouthing numbers to the homeless man. 2240. I glanced back at the dude behind me and he's staring right at the vest guy, who then starts making small hand gestures back like they are communicating something. And at this point, neither of them is looking at me, but there is one on either side of me. I still wasn't sure if I was just being paranoid, so I gathered my groceries on my arm, and then pretended to fumble my wallet and sent change everywhere. Both men began picking up the change for me, and while they were bent over, I just said, "Oh, thanks, don't worry about it. I'm in a hurry, gotta go," and practically sprinted out the door. Neither followed me right away, and there was no one parked near me. I flung all the groceries into the passenger seat, and was pulling out only seconds later by the time I saw the shuffling man come out of the store, looking left and right like he was looking for me, but also maybe just to return my change. Still not sure if I'm reading too much into it, but I keep calling it my near kidnapping, which I hope is an exaggeration. I, 29 female, had a very strange encounter with an older man back in college. Like many college students, I was struggling for money. I lived in an area most would consider wealthy. It was a very popular tourist destination for rich families. As a result of that, I decided that it would be a good idea to go on a sugar baby website to try and earn a passive income. I'd heard horror stories from prior sugar babies and would get cold feet when talking about meeting up with men online. At one point, I decided to suck it up as I needed money to pay rent and made plans to meet up with one of them. It was nothing extravagant, just a trip a few hours out of town to a popular hot spring. I was still nervous and extremely cautious as the trip approached, and made sure all my friends had my location and all the information about this man in case something were to happen. The night before the trip, he had reached out to confirm the plan and wanted to make sure I felt as comfortable as possible. He asked if I needed him to pick me up and if I wanted my own room at the hotel, just in case I wasn't wanting to stay in a room with him. I told him I would drive myself, so I'd be able to leave freely at any time, and said I'd like my own room. Arriving to meet him, the nerves kept growing. I should have listened to my gut. When I arrived at the hotel, it wasn't anything but what I had expected. It was a tiny, dingy motel with about 10 rooms and looked almost abandoned. I saw the man standing outside talking to who I assumed was a worker. They seemed friendly, like old pals. I got out of my car and went to meet the man face to face for the first time. He was nothing like I had expected. He looked very dirty and tired. He asked if I wanted to take my things to the room, and as he opened the door, I saw 2 beds, one of which already had his belongings scattered about. I asked about the separate room, to which he informed me the motel was sold out for the night, so we would have to share. I should have gotten in my car and left, but I was tired after the long drive and it was getting dark. Sharing a room with a stranger seemed more logical than driving hours home on roads I wasn't familiar with for miles and miles without cell service in the dark. After I put my belongings in the room, the man suggested we go to dinner. He said it was just down the road and he would drive. I agreed and got into his truck. I immediately noticed how disgusting it was. There was mud everywhere and all the plastic was caked with a thick layer of what I assume was dog slobber and hair. He got on the main road for the town and drove towards the restaurant. My understanding was that it was just down the road. I was incorrect. We drove for about 30 minutes before arriving in the next town over, where the restaurant was actually located. Sitting down to eat, I was filled with dread. I didn't want to be there any longer, but it would definitely be too late to drive home once I got back to my car. I ate pretty quickly and tried to keep the conversation polite and friendly, as this man seemed to be somebody I wouldn't want to anger. When we got back to the motel, I was searching for anywhere else to stay in the area, but everything was something I couldn't afford. He then offered to take me to the hot springs, and I agreed again, as being in a public area felt the safest. After arriving at the hot spring, he enlightened me to why he picked that specific location. A girl he used to see worked there and he wanted to make her jealous. After a little while, it seemed like he realized she no longer worked there and wanted to go back to the motel. Back in the room, he began talking about his life, and I started to think that maybe he wasn't as creepy as I had thought. Maybe he's just a lonely old man who wanted some company. I became more relaxed as the conversations went on, until he started talking about his ex-wives. I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details of the conversation, as it became tense and panicked with every sentence he added. What I do remember is that his first wife was murdered, and he came home to find her body, and the second one had gone missing, and the police believe she was killed and hidden somewhere. I calmly excused myself to the bathroom and started texting my male friend I had, asking them to come to me. It was almost 2 a.m. at this point, and nobody was willing to make the drive. I did have one friend who called me and told me to leave the call running as long as I needed until I could leave. I came out of the bathroom and let the man know that I was going to sleep. He said it was a good idea since it was so late and headed into the bathroom. He came out after just a few seconds holding an old straight razor. He asked if I would be willing to help him shave his face before bed and made a comment about how nice the razor feels on his neck. I declined and told him I was really tired and would be going to bed. I put my phone on the charger with the call still running, set my alarm for sunrise, and tried my best to pretend to be asleep. For the next few hours, I could hear him walking around the room and rummaging through his belongings. I'm certain at one point he was standing at the foot of my bed watching me sleep. As soon as my alarm went off, I got up, ran to the bathroom, and changed. When I came out of the bathroom, he was fully dressed and the front door was wide open. His whole demeanor had changed from the night before. He was angry. I grabbed all of my items and headed towards the door. As I was leaving, he threw some money at me and yelled that I need to get all of my stuff out of the fridge, which was just a half-empty bottle of Gatorade. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, I noticed the surprising lack of vehicles for a place that was supposed to be sold out. When I got home, I went to delete my profile off the site and saw I had a message from the man. He said he wanted to let me know how nice it was to spend time with me and wanted to come visit me in the near future. So, I live in a county that was pretty rural until the last 10 or 15 years. The biggest town in our county is pretty crowded now. overcrowded, and I hate it. I moved from there to the countryside. I like where I live, except it can be really creepy at night because for miles and miles, it's dark and has no streetlights. One thing about this county is that the main roads always get backed up real quick if there's an accident or whatever, so it pays to go to the back roads. The back roads, like any other rural place, are less populated, dark, and have lots of trees. And no sidewalks, of course. Anyways, a few years ago, something happened that almost made me stop using them. I was driving home kind of late one night. I decided to take one particular back road that shaved off 10 minutes from my commute home. I was tired and had to get up early, so I was going fast trying to get home. This road is a little bit more populated than some, but it is super spooky in some stretches because huge trees are alongside the road and their branches and leaves make a tunnel of sorts. So I'm zipping through and around a curve. Up ahead, I see what I thought was a giant garden flag. You know the flags that people put up in spring in their yards? Well, I thought it was a weird flag because it seemed like it was fairly tall and large, and it was in the middle of the road. As I get closer, my headlights hit it, and it's not a flag. It is a person. A lady. She was wearing a red fez. I live in rural Maryland, and you don't just see a fez every day. A long flowy white dress and an orange reflective sash across her chest. A little strange because she's in the middle of the street. As I drove past her, it got weirder. As dark as it was, as I drove by, I could see that she was about 60. She had glasses and I could see her bright blue eyes. She looked in my passenger window and she started doing this weird bounce thing. I thought she was going to try and get into my car. Mind you, I'm going pretty fast. I don't know what it was about her, but she freaked me the heck out. I didn't think she would try to rob me or anything. I really thought she was a soul snatcher or a skinwalker, to be honest. I honestly don't think she was human. I can't adequately describe how creepy she was. I sped past her as fast as I could. I kept glancing in my back seat to make sure she had not materialized in my car. I prayed, recited scripture, and kept watching my rearview mirror. It was spring, so a little bit warm, but I felt bone-chillingly cold. I could finally make it home, and I run in to tell my mom the story. I got in just as my brother was telling my mom about this weird lady he saw as he was driving. It was the same lady, but he saw her at the intersection from the highway and the back road, whereas I saw her further down the road. We both had the same reaction. She also tried looking in his car. She also was bouncing around when he saw her. He said there was a car in front of him that sped off so fast when they drove past the lady. My brother was so freaked out that he won't travel that road anymore, even during the day. Eventually, I found out that the lady lives in the woods. Apparently at one time her family lived on that road. Her father was ill and she tried to take him to the hospital. He died on the way there and she drove around with his body in her car for hours. I guess she has mental health issues and I think she lost the house or got kicked out. I have friends that live off that street, so when I was talking about it, they knew exactly who it was. I still go on that road, but I haven't seen her since. I do hope she's okay, of course, but I really do not want to run into her again. To preface this and give some context, I am a 21-year-old male who makes a habit of taking road trips across the US and am not one who is inexperienced when it comes to hiking or dangerous situations. I've had people stalk my camp in Kansas and stare over my fire in Utah with a shotgun. Point being, I've had weird experiences, but none that have ever chilled me like this. This just happened earlier today and I want to get it out while the image is still sharp in my mind. I was out hiking in a trail in southern Indiana with a female friend of mine. It was around 90 degrees and muggy as all get out. The trail is the Three Lakes Trail and it is a little over 10 miles long and is circular, so nearly impossible to get lost. We had arrived early in the morning and so there was almost nobody in the park at all, save for a few parked vehicles. We had been hiking the trail for about 3 hours and not seen a soul. Usually I pay attention to my surroundings a bit more and am cautious of people just because of life experiences and this subreddit even, but with good conversation and laughs, I was distracted. My friends and I are walking downhill towards a sharp left turn when out of seemingly nowhere, a woman steps around the bend and starts hiking up the hill towards us with her head down. She was average height, but much more muscular than a typical woman. She is wearing a sports bra, short shorts, and a backpack, which left most of her body exposed. Her tattoos are what first caught my eye. All across her body are those weird shapes and symbols that didn't make much sense. I didn't see anything that resembled a picture or English words. As she came in within about 10 feet of us, she looked up and we made eye contact. That is when everything in me just froze up. Her face had similar symbols tattooed all over and in strings all over her face. Her eyes, though, are what I'll remember for a long time. They were just black sockets, and in the shade of the dense canopy, I couldn't make out that much about what it actually was. With how humid it was that day, I don't believe that the dark sockets were makeup, and so I assumed that all around her eyes were tattooed solid black. On top of this, she must have had colored contacts in her eyes, as there was no white at all. With every horror and cult scenario I've ever heard running through my mind, and her face chilling me to the soul, I blurred out, "Good day for a hike." She just looks at me with this empty stare, holds eye contact, and walks by us. I have never been so shaken up from running into someone out on a trail before, and hope to never see something like that again. In high school, I was a band nerd. During the time of this story, I was a sophomore, 15 female, and was in my second year as a majorette. I had previously played an instrument but found my way to a baton at some point. Because the band was pretty well respected, we often had music majors from the local college interning with our band director. This year we had 3. A 20-something woman working with the flag line, a 24-year-old man working with the drum line, and a 25-year-old man working as an assistant band director or intern. They started working with our groups at the end of the summer during band camp, so we became somewhat familiar with them fairly early into the year. That is how the whole band knew that the flag intern and the band director intern were actually engaged to be married. As teens do, we thought it was super romantic. Not long after the start of the school year, the band director intern was already trying to be cool with all the teens, joking around and being relatable. I can't remember his last name, but his first name was Brian. Red flag number 1, probably. Overall, he seemed charming and safe in a very stereotypical nerd kind of way. Plus, his fiancée was always nearby. I started to feel a mixture of special and uncomfortable when Brian began focusing a little bit more attention on me specifically. At first, I wrote it off as him choosing to speak to me as the majorette captain. A bit of a near peer authority position, my 15-year-old brain reasoned. The discomfort started to become squirmy when he offered me his phone number if I needed anything ever. I knew for certain that he hadn't offered this to other section leads, so this was a choice that singled me out. After that point, things rapidly moved into a place that made me feel less special and more targeted. It is hard to remember a lot of the specifics. I have vague memories of avoiding him on away game bus rides and asking why Tanya, the fiancée, wasn't riding on the same bus. More vagueness around avoiding him during and after practices, feeling a little bit more concerned at times, and eventually outright declining some kinds of romantic invitations. I can't remember when he started mentioning how pretty I was or how I needed to be careful wearing such short practice shorts. I do remember dreading the first time I had to wear our skimpy majorette uniform with him around. Previous experience, aforementioned sad stories, had taught me not to be quiet about this. I started by jokingly alerting friends about the escalating focused attention, then by telling my then senior class sister that he was saying increasingly creepy and inappropriate things. It was only a few days after I told my sister that the last incident with Brian occurred. A few times during the weeks of band camp, he had offered to give me a ride home. I always declined. It was unnecessary but also previous experience, so I knew I had never given him an address or directions to my very rural house, which is why it was the height of scary and creepy. When his car pulled up beside me one Saturday as I was walking down the road in front of my house, we would often walk down our wooded country road when the weather was nice. Alarm bells clanging, I curtly asked him what he was doing there. He calmly said he was just in the area. Highly unlikely, given it was a residential-only, very rural, hard-to-find area. I asked if he knew this was where I lived, and he surprisingly admitted he did. Backing away from the road into the grassy tree-lined ditch, I remember consciously not smiling. I flatly responded, "No, please go." He said when he would offer me a ride. Not wanting to give any indication of where my house was, I moved further into the tree cover and began walking away. Thankfully, my grandfather was an old-school tech head, so I had a bulky cell phone in my pocket. I immediately dialed my sister's cell and filled her in. Thankful for her. She was revving the 1982 engine of her 280Z hatchback for all of its worth when she pulled up. Creepy Brian had been slowly cruising back and forth along the strip of country road where I had camouflaged myself in the trees. As soon as I heard my sister's engine, I headed back towards the road, where I found her stopped in the oncoming traffic lane, shouting through her lowered passenger window at this grown man. Her face in that moment is etched into my memory. I immediately felt safer. Remembering that look still makes me feel warm and secure. I gave his car a wide berth as my sister moved forward to give me access to the passenger door. Pulling a three-pointer, she again stopped by his car and let him know she would call the school, the police, the university, and my grandpa if he didn't turn his happy ass right around and get the heck off our road. We followed his car back to the highway and watched him drive far enough to be comfortable before we went back home. She and I both reported all of the creepy, questionable behavior to the band director and school officials. She had connections in the music department of the university. Musical prodigy, long story, and reported him there also. He did not return to my high school and, as far as I am aware, did not graduate from our local college. It later turned out that the fiancé, who continued to appear at games and practices with flag twirlers, had heard something about his targeting me from those girls. I hadn't known how obvious his attention was, but rumors had been flying. So much so that barely anybody questioned the reason for his sudden absence. From what I understand, she initially stayed with him, but the engagement was eventually broken, and she really never looked me directly in the eye after that day. All that to say this, it frightens me to remember how casually other teenage girls responded to their witnessing his behavior towards me. Some girls even showed hints of envy or jealousy, which makes me sad to remember. Some teenage girls can become so desensitized to the inappropriate attentions and advances of boys and men. They giggle and joke and relate to the creeped out feelings, sometimes missing the subtle red flags that indicate a situation is becoming actually dangerous. If my sister had not given me a safe place to say how he really made me feel, who knows how much further that situation could have escalated. I hope you all really talk to the teenage girls in your life. Be their safe person with no judgment if you can. If you made it this far, thank you for reading or listening. This felt like a cleansing purge. I used to be naively helpful to all sorts of strangers and often picked up hitchhikers solo and in groups, and got them where they needed to go. When I was 19, I had moved to Huntington, a college town in West Virginia, and I worked at a popular bar. My shifts would start at around 9 p.m. and end at about 2 a.m. I didn't know anybody in this town or state even, and I had been there on my own for only a month or so. On one of these nights, one of the customers had taken an interest in conversing with me while I was working my shift. I, being a good employee, conversed pleasantly back. He was in his 30s or 40s, buzzed white hair, with a group of other guys, all of them tattooed and with leather jackets. Nothing against leather or tattoos, I have and wear both. Just giving visual details. He had been there going back and forth between them at their table and me at the bar, pretty much talking to me nonstop for a good couple of hours. At around 1:30 a.m., he mentions he doesn't know where his friends went. I look up oblivious and see the whole bar had virtually cleared out. He was right. Not one of his buddies was in sight. He says they must have all gotten drunk and forgot about him, leaving him there. The man is clearly bummed and concerned because, as he tells me, he lives almost an hour away from here and has no way of getting home now. And it's the middle of winter, so it's snowing pretty hard. He spends the next few minutes on the phone calling the different friends that were at the bar with him, but nobody is answering. He is clearly screwed. I can't leave him in the bar, and I can't in good conscience leave the man out in the snow. So dang, now I've got to drive this stranger home in a place I'm unfamiliar with in conditions I've never really driven in before. No snow in my home state. I tell him, don't worry, when I finish cleaning the bar and closing up, I'll take him home. And I do. We get in the car and he gives me directions as we go. We are talking casually like we had been, just superficial conversation, nothing even hinting at sexual or flirty. I'm not a flirty person, so I'm positive there was no misunderstanding here. Keep in mind it's like 2 in the morning. No one knows where I am or that I'm with this rando, and it's snowing heavily. As we are chatting, suddenly I feel his hand on the back of my neck. It was such an unpleasant feeling. I remember his fingers swirling in the little hairs at the bottom of my hairline, which were too short to make it into the ponytail. I scrunched my neck and just calmly said, I have a knife, as I kept looking forward while driving. The swirling ceased, but the hand lingered on my skin. Again calmly but more firmly, I said, I have a knife. He removed his hand and we kept driving. I figure whatever that was is handled, and we get back to our conversation. Minutes later, I feel his hand fully against the back of my neck, his fingers wrapped gently around its curve. I scrunched my neck again and said, seriously, I have a knife. I have a knife. He removed his hand once more, and then in a very hurt tone, he said, are you really scared of me? After that, he kept his hands to himself. It was a long 1-hour drive, but I got him home and I took off. I'm 29 now, and it wasn't until many years later that it occurred to me that the whole thing was probably a setup he and his friends planned. They probably left him stranded so that the chick he'd been talking to all night will have to take him home, opening the door for sex, consensual or maybe even not. Moral of the story, don't let people you don't know in your car, and also carry a knife.